It was good.
Right now.
I don't got the hitting it, huh? Hello. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you guys for coming. Of course, I'm Ms. Stewart, one of your board members, and we have our board recognitions today. And of course, we're going to start that off by calling one of my faves up, Mr. Joffrey.
Mr. Joffron, good to see you, man. Good seeing you, Superintendent. Board members, thank you for having us today. I'm super excited. I know during the call at the beginning of December, you received some outstanding Christmas cards from some of our students. So hopefully you were able to get those cards out so others can see the wonderful work and talent that we have here in East Baton Rouge Parish. So at this time, we would like to acknowledge those students who did those beautiful Christmas cards for you all, but I'm going to turn it over to our visual arts specialist, Ms. Katie Harlan, who has worked diligently with this contest and really make sure that we get the best work and do what we need to do to make sure that we showcase the talents of our kids in our visual arts department. So Ms. Harlan, is all yours.
Each year, East Baton Rouge Parish Schools Fine Arts Department hosts a greeting card design contest for the district, and one winner is selected in the elementary, middle, and high school categories. This year, we received 42 creative and talented submissions, and 3 winners were selected. Earlier this month, those students also received a greeting card set with their own designs printed on them, and we would also like to honor them for their artistic achievement here right now. So congratulations to Amy Wang, 5th grade from McKinley Elementary School. Amy, you can come on up.
Make it happen.
Stay up here for a picture, please. Zoe Gordon, 6th grade from McKinley Middle Academic Magnet.
Mom and Dad, y'all come on up and take a picture. You gotta take it from the audience. Come on, get a good picture.
Is Zoe here tonight? Anna Majah Wright, 12th grade from Scotlandville Magnet High School.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get those awards to Zoe and Amijah.
Somebody else in the pic? Oh, brothers! Come on, brothers! You proud? Oh, wait, teacher's here. Come on, teacher.
And to solidify the holidays and
The
what
mic
it
not on.
it's not on? Let's see, now it is.
There you go.
There I go. And to solidify the holidays and what good cheer brings to us, we have the opportunity and the special privilege of having one of our renowned elementary choirs with us today who will sing a few tunes to bring us some Christmas cheer. So I am going to bring to the stage, I'm so used to saying to the stage, to the podium, the illustrious principal, Miss Mitchell, who makes sure that she showcases these students as much as she possibly can because they truly deserve it.
And thank you, Mr. Jafferin. That is one of my schools, and of course, Miss Mitchell is one of my really favorites. So, thank you, Miss Mitchell.
You're welcome. To Superintendent Cole, Ms. Stewart, our board member, and all the other board members, we bring you greetings from Park Forest Elementary Creative Sciences and Arts Magnet. We have our choir here. The famous singing pirates are coming to sing to you all today in the absence of their dynamic choir director, Dominique Gibbs. Because she is ill, we have our famous literacy coach, Miss Jennifer Stewart, and also our famous magnet coordinator accompanying them, Miss Sheila Bryant. Thank you so much for receiving us, and I hope you guys have a wonderful time with our famous singing pirates.
Give it up for the singing pirates, y'all.
All right now. All right now.
1, 2, 3.
Hey out there, we are PFE, Hard Forest, Elementary, Creative Sciences and Arts Magnet.
And the pirates
Are ready to sing. Hey! Oh! Go! 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 Pirates are! Go! 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 Hey out there, we are PFP. We wanna have a little Christmas out on the sea. If you never ever came to our shows in the past, then hold on tight, it'll be a blast. Boom, we dressed up in a room. We want to spread this cheers to you and you. Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa's the man, but we are the ones that will make it jam. Hey out there, we are PFP. The singing pirates are ready to sing. You better tune your ears with the holiday classics. It seems so cold that you wanna blast it, but not too loud 'cause we're on the sea. If you wanna sing along, that's fine with me. I know you wanna hear us sing to the Christmas beat, so we're proud to bring you Christmas on the Sea. Go, 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 go. Pirates are.
We have our next singer coming up for her solo, Miss Callie Williams. Give her a hand as she sings Frosty the Snowman.
Frosty the Snowman was a jolly happy soul. With a corncob pipe and a button nose and 2 eyes made out of coal. Frosty the Snowman was a fairy tale, they say. He was made of snow, but the children know how he came to life one day. There must have been some magic in that old silk hat they found. For when they placed it on his head, he began to dance around. Oh, Frosty the Snowman was as alive as he could be. He was made of snow, but the children know how he came to life one day.
Frosty the Snowman knew the sun was hot that day. So he said, let's run and we'll have some fun now before I melt away. Down to the village with a broomstick in his hand, running here and there all around the square, saying, catch me if you can. He led them down the streets of town, right through the traffic cop. And only paused for a moment when he heard him holler,
Stop!
oh, again someday.
I'll be back again someday.
Give it up for Josiah Laverne, our 5th grader. She's gonna bring you Christmas Time is Here.
Christmas time is here. Happiness and cheer. Fun for all that children call their favorite time of year. Snowflakes in the air. Carols everywhere. Old hymn times and ancient rhymes of love and dreams to share. Sleigh bells in the air, beauty everywhere. Yuletide by the fireside and joyful memories there. Christmas time is here.
Happiness and cheer. Fun for all that we could see. Such spirit through the year. Sleigh bells in the air. Beauty everywhere. Yuletide by the fireside and joyful memories there.
for Mr. Brennan, y'all. We have our 5th graders who's going to sing Jingly Jingle Bells.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits rise. What fun it is to laugh and sing when sleigh is on tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. All the hills we go, laughing all the way. Bells on the bobtail rings, making spirits bright. What fun it is to laugh and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. All the hills we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail rings, making spirits bright. What fun it is to laugh and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
For our very last song, we would like to introduce one of our singing pirates from 2018. One of our very original singing pirates. And the beauty about this performance tonight is the fact that we have our old singing pirate with our youngest singing pirate. And tonight they're going to sing a treat for your ears. Ready, ladies?
Where are you, Christmas? Why can't I find you? Why have you gone away? My world is changing. I'm rearranging. just two.
Where are you, Christmas? Do you remember the girl you used to know? You and I were so carefree. Now nothing's easy. Did Christmas change or just
Okay. To my colleagues, if I can have your attention, please. I know that some are trying to get to their seats, so I'll give you about 2 minutes. It's 5:03, 5:04. You have 1 minute. 1 minute to get to your seat, please. Thank you. You all, with all of the excitement, make sure that you have logged in. Colleagues, make sure that you've logged into the regular meeting today. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. Today is Thursday, December 19, 2024. It is actually 5:05 p.m. The invocation tonight will be led by School Board member Shoshone Stewart, and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Cadet Captain Keely Kornbacher of Glen Oaks High School, accompanied by Senior Army Instructor Major Retired Corey G. Lewis. Let us stand.
May you bow your heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for gathering us here today. Thank you for assembling us here during this holiday season. Please allow all the blessings, all the love, all the needed support amongst each other be given, be showered among everybody in this room. We thank you, Lord, for this day. We ask that you continue to do what's best. We continue to ask you to align our minds, align our hearts to do what's best for our children. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Cole, fellow citizens of East Baton Rouge, it is my honor and privilege to introduce a great American. She is a junior at Glen Oaks Magnet High School and will continue to participate in this program. She will soon complete her second year as a JROTC cadet, as right now she serves as the commander of the Glen Oaks Magnet High School Junior ROTC Honor Guard. She's also a member of the girls basketball team, band, track and field, and is also the captain of the varsity volleyball team. She has a grade point average of 3.5, and we're working on continuing to raise that. She is a model cadet who has taken the challenge of living up to the JROTC Cadet Creed. Following graduation, she plans to attend Southern University, majoring in education. She is the daughter of Casey and Keith Kornbacher. Ladies and gentlemen, here to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America, I present to you with great pride, Cadet Keely Kornbacher.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic with which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And Ms. Keeley, on behalf of the school board and the district, we would like to present you with this medal and thank you for all that you've done, and would like to ask you to continue on your road and your path of excellence.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, future educator, and one who is planning to go to the best HBCU that exists. All right, we will now have a roll call.
District 3, President Powell Lewis.
Present.
District 9, Vice President Martin.
Present.
District 1, Mr. Blue.
Here.
District 2, Mr. Lannis. District 4, Ms. Stewart.
Present.
District 5, Mr. Lewis. District 6, Mr. Russ.
Present.
District 7, Mr. Goday.
Here.
District 8, Ms. Sule.
President.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now call this meeting to order. On to item B1, meeting minutes. Board minutes of the November 21st, 2024 regular board meeting, the November 7th, 2024 special board meeting, and the November 7th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as published in the official journal. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay. Seeing none, are there any comments from the board at this time? Okay. All right.
Approval of the minutes.
Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Martin to approve the meeting minutes and seconded by Mr. Russ. Again, comments from the board? Seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to Alphabet C, information only. We have both the monthly financial report listed as well as personnel changes. You can find this information on board docs if desired or needed. Now on to Alphabet D, receive as information. Item 1, update from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon to the board members and as well as those of us who are visiting with us in person and those who are at home. Today is day 92, but who's counting? It has been a tremendous first semester. I have thoroughly enjoyed being the superintendent and want to thank the board as well as the community for your support. I've had an opportunity to visit every school in our district with the exception of 2. I'm going to visit those 2 schools in the morning. They don't know I'm coming unless they're watching the board meeting to now, which we know everybody in our school system watches every board meeting. So I'll be there to visit with you first thing in the morning. For my report this evening, there are a number of people who are going to participate in the report. And as they participate, I'll mention various aspects of what we're doing. But tonight, I'd like for the board as well as the community to hear from the individuals we've asked to lead our alternative settings. As you may or may not know, there are times when students make mistakes, and by law we're required to continue their education, and sometimes we have to transition them from their regular environment to a space where they can work hard to return. And we have identified those as our alternative schools. And let me say that the leaders we've selected to lead those schools are doing phenomenal work, and I thought it important for you all to meet them and then hear a little bit about what is happening at those settings. And so at this time, we'll ask our director of the alternative schools, Mr. James Smith, to come up and introduce the 3 leaders, and we're going to hear briefly from each leader at the elementary, middle, and high school site. Mr. Smith. Ms. Smith, when I called your name, you should have been moving to the mic. I kept talking so you could start walking, but you waited until the end. No, you wanted it. You look good tonight too. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent, board members. I didn't want to interrupt you, so that's why I didn't move at the time. But it is my pleasure to introduce to you the alternative school leaders. In the elementary school, we have Ms. Sabrina Honor. In our middle school, we have Principal Darren Clark. And also in our high school, we have Principal Corey Grant. So at this time, I'll allow those leaders to come forth. They are, as Mr. Cole said, they're doing a fantastic job in our schools. I'm excited to be the executive director for those schools and to watch them unfold their plans as to why the schools are actually working so well. So without any further ado, our leaders.
Good evening. I'd like to say welcome to Phoenix Nation. This is Alternative Education. My name is Sabrina Honor. I am the humble and proud principal of EBR Readiness Elementary, and I have two other colleagues with me as we share a little bit about the one and only discipline center that you have and how we service the students in East Baton Rouge Parish. So let's talk about data, shall we? So the SPS in 2021 and 22 was 67.1C, and 22-23 was a 72.1C, and 23-24. It is my privilege to announce that the Discipline Center Alternative Education has a letter grade of a B. It is a 81. We have increased our progress points from 21-22 from a 65C to a 65.6C. And interest and opportunities, 95.3, all the way to maximum points, 150 points. This lets you know that in interest and opportunities, we are, just because students make mistakes, they cannot have a well-rounded education with opportunities to explore their interest as well. And that is attributed to the hard work of every faculty and staff member and our executive directors who allow us the leverage to do those things. So let me introduce you to the littlest of Phoenixes, the EBR Readiness Elementary School. The first thing when you talk about being a change agent and bringing those scores up is about data-driven instruction. See, we don't have the privilege of having the students from August. We don't know when they'll make their mistake. We don't know when they will come. So that means making sure we focus on data. We have to diagnose where the student is, whether it's August, October, it could be December or January, and then make a plan to move them up. That being said, we also have the privilege of having small class sizes, and that is attributed to the plans of all the schools in EBR. We do not have large class sizes, targeted instruction, and we have consistent parent communication. We are an advocate of talking to our parents. We have great communication with them. And we have a great school culture with our students as we are able to partner with them as we help them grow. Attendance. Attendance is very important, and I'd like to shout out that our students do try to come to school, and we have over an 80% attendance rate, but also our faculty and staff have over a 90% attendance rate. Our faculty and staff is very dedicated in coming to school each and every day and help make an impact on the students at the school. Also, we have an outstanding child welfare and attendance person in Ms. Mavis Lewis, who actually goes door to door if need to help our students and make sure they get to school. You have an excuse, we're gonna make sure you get to school. Last but not least, high expectations. We make sure that we have rewards. We do PBIS twice a month, and we also reward on a daily basis. We have activities for our students to make sure that they want to come to school and do their very best. We do town halls every month. We award our kids who don't miss days in school, kids who make good grades, and guess what? Work habits is important there. If you are doing your work, you have your materials, we celebrate that. So right now, the goal for our school is growth. We want to grow each and every child. We are measuring our growth where you are now to where you're going at the end of the school year. So now I'm going to change over to my esteemed colleague at EBR Readiness Middle, Mr. Clark.
Good afternoon. My name is Principal Clark. I'm at EBR Readiness Middle School. First, I want to thank the superintendent, all the board members, especially Ms. Powell, because she always coming to the school and supporting. My
Are we
staff.
calling out districts today, sir? Okay.
She started, Mr. Superintendent, but I'm gonna finish now. Okay. Gotcha.
From my social worker to my secretary, clerk, all my employees at EBR Residence Middle School. So the biggest thing, this is my third year as well. The biggest thing, how we were able to grow our students to get this B collectively between the high school, middle, and elementary school. So first, we created a culture of learning with the motto, new mindset, new results. Basically, you got to spell, but hey, we can change that mindset. We're gonna get new results, and we're gonna still be successful. We still had to create a culture of learning. And the one way we did that, we made sure we had teachers that wanted to be there. They wanted to be on our campus and work for Principal Clark. So that was a big thing. Once we got the teachers, you can't learn without teachers. So we had to get the teachers that were happy to be on our campus. Then we created that culture. We say, no matter what, we still instructions is the number one thing. Yes, it's about discipline and safety, but instructions are number one thing. We still had to have instruction being applied. Okay, next, level up counseling, check-ins, counseling risk assessment. We say, how they help us grow our students. The big thing about that is, I was an athlete. I played baseball at Southern, ended up playing a few years of pro baseball at the New York Mets. The biggest thing, I relate stuff to athletics. So the biggest thing, knowing your personnel. I need to know every student that comes onto that campus. Every day we have orientation. If I'm not at a principal meeting, I'm in orientation, making sure I find out who our students are so I can help that student grow and get growth. Also, our counselor is checking in on those students. A counselor needs to know what's going on. Has this kid had this kind of situation? The kid 504, the kid ESS, can this kid come to school? Does he have problems at home? Once I find that out, I can help that student to try to still continue his education. If we don't know these things, it's hard to make sure the student is at school every day so he can get educated. So that's a big thing. Create the master schedule. My background is counseling. I was a guidance counselor. So we're saying that I make sure that I create the master schedule so when our counselor gets there after the summer's over, all our students are already inputted into the system. From there, she adjusts the schedule and makes sure any new students coming in are added to the schedule. My counselors have been doing a great job. Thank you to the counseling department, because anytime I call, they're coming in, they help us out and coming in and support. But also to the counselor, they also do check-ins every morning. In the morning, every student that comes in to the front, they get searched, they get checked. When they come in, they walk in, the counselor checks in on them. Are you okay? Is everything going great? Have you ate? Have you ate breakfast? So that's a big thing. You have to feed students. Some of these students don't get a chance to eat. This is their meal by them eating breakfast. They'll tell you, I don't want to hear nothing you saying until I eat. I've been hungry. I didn't come home last night. So these things are big things to support. After that, then we can help educate them. Course pacing charts, A day and B day. I'm a big person on evidence. We made sure we mapped out the whole year how many A days we had, how many B days we had in our schedule. I need to see, I gave each teacher a calendar. I want to see, what are you doing this day? So let's say Monday might be an A day, Wednesday a A day, and Friday. I need to know every single day to the end of the year, what are we doing in class? The whole first semester was mapped out. We knew some days that we had, let's say, town halls, or we might have had a half a day. So you couldn't count that. You wasn't going to the third and fourth block, but it was that strategic. We need to know exactly what you're doing every single day. They could modify it if they needed to, but they had to let us know. They had to let our administration know. So that was big. We had to have the evidence on A day every single day for the first semester and every single B day. And we would look, I should be able to walk into your classroom. Today is B day. It's the 19th. We are doing this assignment on this day. We had to have the evidence. Student-made anchor charts. I believe in students, when students create stuff themselves, they remember it. So when they're doing their assignments and they see the anchor chart that they made put on the wall, they help them with their work. Student work samples with rubrics, data walls in every classroom. Data is one of the most important things. You can't grow if you don't know your school's data. If you don't know your students, you don't know what level they're on, you don't know if they're what their test scores or leaf scores are, you can't be successful. So we force teachers to put data walls in every single classroom. And coming too, we're gonna have a data room. Common board configuration, another thing, part of evidence. Every classroom you walk in on our campus, you can see the same board configuration, the same questions, the same standard, the same lesson plans, even put into like put on their board. So we can say, hey, I can go look at this, look in this classroom and say, okay, what are we doing today? I can see it on the board, and then I can see the standard, check that standard, this standard say you might be citing textual evidence, I can go around and say, yeah, this teacher is citing textual evidence. It's that detailed. Okay, teach like a champion strategist, utilize in every classroom. What I learned, just, you know, huh?
Let's change the slide.
Okay. Yeah, well, teach like a champion strategist. What I learned with teach like a champion strategist, a lot of our teachers these days, they didn't start off in education. So meaning that they need to learn strategies of teaching. So most of our best educators are people who are good at capturing orders of students. They're not in the classroom. A lot of them in churches and they're in barbershops. So we have to teach teachers strategies for them to understand it. So I'm gonna go to my next thing, interests and opportunities. Interests and opportunities we had an African American art museum. With the African American art museum, students were able to do something with looking at art that a lot of kids who go into alternative schools are not able to do. And what I mean by that, usually an art museum, especially an African American art museum, is like a high society thing. That's something you might see with Jack and Jill. Those students might get brought to that. But we brought our alternative students to, we brought our art museum to our school. And if any board member get a chance, please come to our school and see our art museum. But we have an African American art museum. We brought that to our school. They can get a chance to look at this African American art and they can ask questions about the art. Okay. My last slide is basically talking about strategies for supporting academic process. So we're at the B. These are the things we're going to do that's listed right here to keep us at a B or to go to an A. The biggest one is at the bottom. It says monotonous repetition of CFAs and input into assessment spreadsheet. That means it's coming formative assessments, and that's just quizzes and testing to see depth of knowledge or where you at. If you were here at this week, 2 weeks later, how have we showed this student growth? What's the evidence to show that this student is getting better? So monotonous repetition of coming formative assessments. And I go back to that baseball, like when I played ball, and my new ED made me understand it. He did a great analogy. He said, you want to get better at baseball or get better at catching ground balls, what you do? I said, you gotta catch more. You need about 300 ground balls a day. He said, exactly. So in that CFAs, I said monotonous repetition. We gotta do repetition over and over and over of CFAs, and that's a big thing of helping us grow. And that's a part of EBR Reginald, and that's how we grow.
Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent Cole, and board members. It's an honor to stand before you to discuss significant key factors in what play into our success of our schools. At this time, I really want to acknowledge my team, my ILT team, and members of EBR Readiness High staff.
Hey, y'all.
My first slide is the creation of high expectations in the school. When I first got to EBR Readiness, I had to look at and see where we were at and where I wanted to go as a leader of that school. And when you're trying to create a culture of high expectations, everybody in the building play a role in creating a culture that you want as a leader. That's the SRO, that's the cafeteria workers, that's the custodian, that's the clerks up front. Everybody plays a role in creating the culture you want in a school as a leader. I only listed two, and we know the two factors that are very, very important in creating a good culture is the role of the teacher and the role of the student. When I inherited the school, some things needed to be changed. And teacher morale was low. They didn't feel valued. And being a former coach, that's just something I'm good at. I knew I had to listen to teachers. I had to make them feel valued. I allowed them to have input. And I have a lot of things listed up there: high quality instructional material, teaching bell to bell, effective lesson planning. But if you don't create a culture with the students and the teachers, none of that's really real. So the role of the students, being at EBR Readiness, we serve every student across the district. and we had to have some tough conversations. And one, students had to take personal responsibility for their learning. Under Corey Grant, as a leader of that school, you're coming there to learn. These terms are not negotiable. And students had to have respect for each other. These are things that we had to hold students accountable, and in turn, teachers were able to be held accountable to deliver the quality instruction we needed in classrooms. It was hard. When you go into a location, it's hard to get buy-in because you got leaders in and out of the buildings, and they don't know if you're gonna stay there and stay true to your plan. But we were able to make a change in the children. The children bought into the culture that we was trying to create in the spring, that when we got there. In the classrooms, teachers are teaching bell to bell. They are using tier 1 material, relevant tier 1 materials in the classroom. When I got there, teachers' mindset was a little different, and one of the most important things in creating a culture at an alternative school is the mindset of your teachers. Everybody on the staff is not gonna have the growth mindset that, regardless of the circumstances of these children and all the problems and issues they come with, you still can teach them and they still can learn. And I like to salute my staff, my teachers, because they did, and I say I'm not trying to get buy-in, it's up to me to create it, and I did. And to the students, because they did what they were supposed to, it's really tough, but we was able to to improve the culture, and we're still growing at this time. But one of the biggest successes was creating a culture of high expectation and a better school culture. Next is culture of academic achievement. When you're at an alternative school, you have to tailor your lessons to the needs of students, because the students we're getting, they are not all the students. A majority of them are performing at a low level. They're not on level. So it's important to differentiate instruction. Is one of the hardest strategies that you can ask a teacher to do. When a kid is not learning on a 9th grade level, when you got to differentiate those lessons to a lower level and meet the needs of other students who are on level, to challenge the students to move, to learn those on-level standards, or to push them to an advance. I don't want to be repetitive, because the leaders before me have said all the same things with common board configurations, ILT, PLCs, but at our location, we meet the needs, our culture of academic achievement, we meet the needs of our students, and we are continuous with intentionally differentiating our instruction using small groups with fidelity. That's what's taking place in our schools. Last but not least, building a relational capacity with stakeholders. This is one of the most important things, key factors that contributed to our success. And we do have celebrations up there. I don't want to leave out that we celebrate our children when they are performing, when they are doing well in class, when they are doing positive things. We do celebrate children. But our children learn better when they feel supported, when they are heard, and our community is involved. We have a list of community stakeholders that are involved in our children's lives, and I want to go without acknowledging them. Empower 225, 100 Black Men, Family Road, Greater Baton Rouge, Truce, Employ Baton Rouge, Peak Behavior Health Services. Kudos to Home Depot Community Service. They created a beautiful garden on our campus. They donated $20,000 so we was able to beautify an area on our campus. The United States military branches, Healthy Youth Social Services, our site health mental professional, juvenile services, Dr. Wade. And I saved this person for last, and he's in the audience. Reverend Buckley, Brandon Buckley, him and his men, him and his team at his church comes mentor our kids. And he came in there, he said, I want your challenging youth. And you can see in the cafeteria up there in the picture, this is some of our most challenging youth. They are locked in with Reverend Buckley, and his team are on our campus, in our students' lives. And I thank you. And this is very important, that the community play a role and stay involved in schools, our inner city schools. And I want to say thank you for allowing EBR Readiness Schools to come up and share our successes. And I'll say to inspiring principals, books I read of author Baruti Kafeli, aka Principal Kafeli. One of my Bibles I use, the name of the book is the school I lead better? Is the school I'm at better because I lead it? And I say to Madam President, Superintendent Cole, and all the board members, EBR Readiness High is a better school because Corey Grant leads it. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you for the work you're doing. I've had an opportunity to visit with all of you at all 3 sites. You guys are doing phenomenal work there with a group of students that oftentimes people can forget about, but it's a testament to your leadership that you and your teams at the schools have not forgotten about those students and are ensuring that just because or simply because they made one mistake, they are still able to get a high quality education in a safe environment. And so thank you so much for what you do. And please, after tonight's presentation, with people watching at home, and you get contacted by someone from another school system or another district about coming to work in that district, please stay, because we need you and the children need you that you just talked about. So thank you so much for your efforts and for your work. As we continue, we're going to have another presentation from Lean Frog to talk about our facilities update. He and I have been speaking, and he is here tonight to do some data disaggregation. Before we get to that, Brian, Madam President.
Yes, I do apologize. I believe we have some board members who would like to make comments on the previous presentation. So first in the queue is Mr. Lana.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, first, let me say, I think it goes without saying, I thought the superintendent was the best punchline man in the city. But Principal Grant, you took the cake tonight, my brother. You took the cake. Phenomenal presentation. Again, a lot of great work taking place. I just had a few questions, one of which is, what's the process for a student transitioning back into their home school? I think what you guys are doing on the ground makes absolute sense. I love everything that you said, everything you presented, but I was just curious about what is the transitional role when the student shows that they are now ready, they have level set it, they have reset, and let's say that the parent thinks that they are ready to go back to their original home school. What does that transition look like?
I'm going to ask Mr. Smith. And if any one of the school leaders like to respond, they can first, and then I'll add to that, Mr. Smith.
So there are 2 separate ways that the kid can actually transition back to school. They can level up, which means that they are going through certain processes during the time frame of their expulsion where they're actually having good grades, they have good behavior, they are actually doing things around their school that give them points, a point system that they can go back into their schools earlier than their actual locker date or their end date for the expulsion center. If not, at the end of their actual locker time, whatever their regular time is, we actually employ part of my team with the Office of Alternative Programs, where we actually have that student and their parents, along with our counselor, Ms. Watts. They actually transition their kid back to their regular schools to make sure that they are mentally ready and physically ready to go back into their schools based upon the lessons that they've learned and the academic growth that they've had at the alternative schools, going back into the regular schools. So it is a conversation that we do have with parents, just transition those kids back into the regular programs so that they understand that they're much better going back to their schools than they were coming.
And in addition to that, board member Lannis, there are times when the leaders will call and say, we have a student who made a mistake. who's doing a phenomenal job and is ready to return early. And oftentimes we'll contact the homeschool and say, can we have a conversation? So there are multiple ways that the students are able to transition back. A lot of times our school building leaders make those tough decisions as a result of following the guidelines that are laid out in our Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. But I can say the vast majority of our school leaders are open to children returning when in fact they've shown that they're prepared and they recognize their mistake and they've worked extremely hard in the alternative setting to return. So there are guidelines, policies, and procedures we have for the return, but there are occasions where there's a conversation between leadership and with the families to ensure that they're able to transition back.
Thank you. And that's honestly why I asked the question, and I think it was a perfect pivot to what you just said, Superintendent Cole, was, a lot of times you see some students who struggle inside of the larger school settings, and when that does happen, they feel as though they're trapped inside of, I won't use the word trap, but they feel like they're locked inside of a school where they don't want to be, or they feel like they have done what they needed to do or mastered what they needed to do, but they still can't transition and go back. But I think just for the record, people needed to hear that. One, if you have a student that has a problem, there are systems in place to self-correct, but also get them the proper needs that they need, like you said before, smaller classroom sizes. A lot of students need that, but it just needs to be said, shown, and I appreciate, and I think the board appreciates you all spelling this out and just showing that even with a student going there, you can still transition and go back to your school even before your time sets for you to go back, if you can show and prove that you have done what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Mr. Lannis for asking the question I was going to ask for the same reasons. I've had a varied career in law enforcement and public service, and I've seen firsthand the capability of people to change. And certainly children, most of all, are not defined by what they did on their worst day. And so I'm glad to hear that we have those robust systems in place to be very human in the face of sometimes draconian zero tolerance policies that send people out of their schools for truly minor infractions, and when you look at the grand scheme of things. With my colleague, Mr. Lewis, not here, he and I always agree on one point about alternative schools, which is that you are taking care of truly the most vulnerable students that we have. These are kids, yes, they've misbehaved, yes, they've done things that cause them to have to go there, but they're doing that because of the environment they came from and the things they've gone through in life, and they need our love and our support almost more than many of our other students. So I'm very grateful to you, principals, and to all of your staff who do this very, very difficult work with very challenging young people and children every day. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I have entered into the queue as well. Just having the opportunity to visit all three of our readiness schools. Actually, I believe, isn't there a fourth site as well? Are there two, what is it, high school sites?
Yes.
Okay, so I've gotten a chance to visit all four, and you all, when I say you can tell that there is teaching and learning going on, there is not a lot of movement in the hallway in between during class time. During transition time, of course, they're moving from one class to the next. But any given day that I have stopped by any of the campuses, I have never experienced where there is movement when there should not be. If you pass by classrooms, teachers are teaching, students are participating in class. And I guess my question, Superintendent Cole, is how can we assist or have mentors from the alternative schools to assist some of our traditional schools that are experiencing the issues that our alternative schools do not experience?
Are you referring to teacher mentors?
Well, teacher mentors, and whether it's for classroom management, hallway management, climate and culture, those kinds of things.
I think some of that is already happening. I think under the leadership of our Chief Academic Officer, Katasha Edwards, she set up opportunities for TNT teachers to learn from other teachers at all of our schools where we see excellence happening in the classroom, and so those things are actually happening. And as you said, at all three of those schools, teaching and learning is taking place with strong individuals who want to be there. They have requested, many of them have requested to work in what we might consider as challenging environments, but for them are easy environments because they want to make those connections with kids. So we do have that happening. I do want to see it expand so every teacher who is struggling with a particular area of their work can partner with a mentor or teacher who is doing that work extremely well. So we're talking about having a district-wide professional development fair at BRCC where teachers can sign up for the areas that they identify as an area of growth, and then we have expert teachers who are doing extremely well in those areas, providing the professional development on an ongoing basis. So we want to do that at the beginning of next school year, where the entire school system has an opportunity to choose what they want to grow, the area they want to grow in, and then allow teachers who work in our system to provide that support for them. If we want to continue this work outside of the school building, I think the board can support by investing in those educators who are able to do this work at a high level. So we have to think about ways to compensate them for their expertise outside of the normal school day so that our teachers who are struggling can learn, grow, and get better.
Thank you so much. Totally agree. Ms. Sule.
Yes, I wanted to say congratulations on the growth. Getting to a B is awesome. Thank you so much for your hard work. And then I had a question about once a student leaves the alternative school, goes back to their, I guess, regular school, do y'all have a statistic or a rate on how often those kids end up coming back to you guys?
We do not at this present time have that statistic, but I definitely can get that to you.
I would love to just kind of see where that's at. How many kids actually end up at some point in their schooling back at the alternative school?
Yes, ma'am.
Again.
Ms. Sule, do you mean during the current school year or at a later date and time? Another school year?
Tomorrow?
No, I mean...
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'll get you back. I mean, do you want to know whether or not they return during the same school year or if they return during a future school year?
Anytime.
Okay. All right.
Anytime. Yeah. Thank you. And not tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was kidding.
No problem. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, Superintendent Cole.
We're going to continue with a presentation from Lean Frog around our facilities update. Ms. Brian.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. It's good to be back with you. Just wanted to give you guys an update before the holiday break of where we're at. Currently, tonight, we're just going to go over, what the milestones, where we're at, what's been completed, and what's going on, and where we're going next. Right now, we basically have been doing a lot of data collection, a lot of cleaning. We have established 132 data elements. Now that's not data points. Those 132 data elements translate to about 114,000 data points. So about 78% of those we've actually got and are in process of cleaning and getting them into the system. We are waiting on a handful of elements. I know there's some charter school information we're waiting on, and we'll roll that into that. And that number may go up a little bit when we get more data, because we may say, hey, there's other things we want to add, particularly with like the charter school elements. But we have gone as far as also identifying peers for the district to use. In the peers, what we did is we looked at enrollment, demographic composition, because we want districts that are similar to EBR, and also overall expenditures. We looked at having 3 districts from Louisiana, 3 districts from the Southeast, and then 3 national districts. EBR is very unique. I will say that. So it wasn't easy. And to be honest, we went through this list 3 or 4 times and had to play with the criteria to really dial it in. There are maybe a couple here you say, that one's borderline, but that's because there's no one better that we looked at nationally when we went through. We have also, if you look at our schedule right now, we intend hopefully to have all that data collection done this month. We've been working on the application spec already, and like I said, we've already started loading the data into some database tables. We're a little bit ahead of the schedule on that side because we thought we were going to have to wait until the spec was approved before we loaded the data tables, but to be honest, with the inputs we've had, we felt there's a good level of this that we're very confident it's not going to change, so we can go ahead and start building it. The other thing that we've done is we've gone ahead and set up Tableau as the application piece. We've gone ahead and set that up so we can do this building. So we're a little bit ahead of the schedule on that side. I'm still showing the full schedule here, but again, we're trying to pull that up. That's our intent as of now. It really comes down to once we look at the spec, if you guys, and you'll see that on the next slide, I would like to do another board liaison meeting mid to late January so we can really dig in to like the user interfaces to make sure it's what you want because if you make a change after I build those, it's harder. So if we can nail that down next month, then I can move from the tables to actually the UI interface. And I don't want to promise that move up until I hear what you guys say, just in case you surprise me with something that I'm not prepared to do. And it surprises me and takes a little longer than I think. So again, right now we've got Tableau, we've got 103 of those data elements. And again, what you have to keep in mind is every one of those data elements is for every school over 5 to 10 years. So when I said about 114,000, that's 5 years. Some of those are going back 10 years where there's data. So it's a lot of data. We have identified the key performance indicators and again, I want to share those with you guys in January in detail to make sure those are in line with your expectations. Again, that meeting's probably going to need to be about an hour and a half so we can really get into the detail. It's not really something that I'd put everybody to sleep tonight. I would enjoy talking about it, but you guys wouldn't like it. So we need to do that meeting offline. And then again, there's 29 elements we've identified that we're waiting on. There could be more depending on what's available on the request. The next thing we're going to do again is that meeting in mid to late January. We're going to finalize pulling all that data, and then we're going to hopefully in January we can reach agreement on the spec, the user interface piece, and then at that point I can really run fast. And we will continue doing our bi-weekly meetings with the team internal to the district and keeping them abreast of what's going on. So right now we're on target. It looks good. We still look like we can accelerate the schedule. It looks like we're going to be where we need to be for you guys. Any questions? Wow, I was expecting a lot more from you after last time. But I really look forward to that liaison meeting. Again, Mr. Morales will help get that set up for us. And again, we really need to spend some time going over the details at that point. And again, if we need to come back again after that, after we go, hey, we'd like to see it this, could you go show it? We'll do another meeting very quickly, because again, as soon as I get that laid down, we can go a lot faster. Okay? I am going to step out because I'm going back to Alabama for Christmas because I've been here too long in Louisiana this week. But you guys have a Merry Christmas, and I thank you guys for letting me give you an update tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Eady. We sincerely appreciate the work you're doing and look forward to our continued efforts. At this time, we're going to continue in my presentation with the report from the second half of our school update. If any of this information you want to cut, let me know, Ms. Sule. But we're going to continue in this portion of the report with Andrea Okonski, who's going to come up and talk a little bit about the second half of our school performance information. Now, for me, it's extremely important that we do two things. One is inform you of where we are academically, but then two, inform the public. So tonight we're going to take a very strategic look at our subgroup data. Now, you have a lot of information that has been provided to you. Andrea is going to go over the highlights this evening of our subgroup data so we can really take a look at where we need to dig in with those relative subgroups. Ms. Okonski.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, and thank you, Board, for affording me another opportunity to be with you tonight. If the technology team could give us an assist with the deck, here we go. So when we met last time, just to recap, and for those who might be listening who weren't with us, we looked at our trends over the last really 6-7 years, because the formula that's in existence right now by the Louisiana Department of Education began in 2018. So we looked at over time what our district performance score was, how it related to the state. We used all those fancy acronyms and terminology the state uses to glance over each index that contributes to that score. And then we talked about the performance labels of certain schools and certain school spotlights. What we wanted to do tonight is kind of organize tonight's discussion into 3 main parts. The first is, what is those words that we use? What do they really mean and what do they really measure? What does it take to move up to a letter grade? And if the A is the ultimate goal, what does it take to be an A in the state of Louisiana? And then lastly, as the superintendent said, we wanted to share some subgroup data to look at really the subgroups that we need to zone in on if we're going to move this work together. And so keeping in mind as we do and as we talk about these words and these point values, that scale that you see there to your left, if we want to be a B district, 75 is the goal. So as we talk tonight and we talk about every student earns a point or set of points with the assessments that they take. And in your backup, you've got those charts to see how those points weigh out. So as we talk about these assessments, if we want to be a B, we've got to be earning 75 or higher in each of these areas every time. If we want to ultimately be an A, we've got to be above that 90, okay? So let's start with, how do these points contribute? We talk about an assessment index. We talk about a progress index. We talk about strength of diploma. How does that work? We all know that students take the LEAP exam, right? If I take the LEAP exam and there's 5 levels of achievement and I earn a basic, I earn 80 points for my school and my district. If I earn a mastery, I earn 100 points. If I earn an advanced, I get 150 points. So while it's important to look at all 5 achievement levels, because for unsatisfactory or approaching, we get 0 points. So we have to focus on all 5 levels. But when we bring these reports to you, we're often doing it mastery and above, because that's the benchmark by where we've got to be to move the work. Now, if I'm in elementary or middle school, those assessments weigh a little bit more. You can see on this chart. And that's what we call the assessment index. It's basically your LEAP test or your alternative assessments for your students with disabilities who qualify or your English learners. Then where does progress come in? What the state does is the state tracks a student over time, from 1 year to the next. If I am moving, I earn points. And so each individual student receives a target after each LEAP test that they take. If I hit my target, I get 150 points. It's an A for my school, for my district. If I don't hit my target, there's a second way that we can earn points. And we do well in this area, as you see by all the schools that have A's and B's in progress. Because what the state does is the state ranks me according to my peers, according to all the boxes that I check. If I'm economically disadvantaged, if I am homeless, if I'm special education, I get pulled out of a subset of students that are just like me, and I'm rank ordered. And depending on my rank order, I earn a significant value of points. So what I've done for you is, and I want to thank the Louisiana Department of Education, because a lot of this comes from their library, is we've prepared a handout for you. Because last week we had a couple of questions, or several questions, and a great discussion about some of these indices. For instance, Ms. Sule, I think question 6, I had you in mind when we designed question 6 about interests and opportunities, because you'll have a link there to that menu, and our team from EBR Readiness talked about how they focus on that indices, and you'll be able to see how schools can earn points there and what the values and the areas there. Ms. Powell-Lewis, we had a discussion about dual enrollment, and some of your colleagues did about the strength of diploma. Questions 8 and 9 will show you that 100 points is that basic diploma that everyone earns, but if I've got the dual, if I've got the advanced, then I can creep up to get me towards that 150. The last thing that I'll talk about on here is the ACT. ACT is 25% for our high school right now, okay? Think about this. Our district average is under an 18. If I want to get points on the ACT, the point values start really at a 17 or an 18. So If I am under the district or state average, I am not earning those points for my school. And so as we talk about our assessment strategy, and as we talk about the vision of getting to be a B district, if I've got an 18, I only earn 70 points. If I get a 21, I can earn 100 points. We have several students, as you look at our ACT composite that you're going to see here in a minute for our subgroups, that are below that. And so if we are below that 18, we're not earning points towards that index. So our question and our challenge becomes, how do we close the gap for those students who are below the 17, but also identifying those students who just need a simple push to get between that 17 and 20 range. And many of you I know have worked with high school, so I can see your wheels turning there. So I've kind of woven some of this in between, but what does it take to be an A? If we're talking about our LEAP assessments, if every student is mastery and higher, you're earning an A in that index. But remember, we can get basic in the B range. We can get some B points in the basic range. We get you to basic first, then we can move to mastery. That progress range, everybody who meets their target gets the points. On the ACT side, really the goal is a 21. The A districts that you're seeing out there and who earn an A in ACT, the average is at 21 or nearing 21. It's closer to 21. Strength of diploma, you don't just graduate in 4 years because you earn 100 points for the 4-year diploma, but it's what have I added, what's on my transcript. Every time I have those advanced coursework pieces, I have that IBC, that credential, it earns me more points higher than 100. And then your grad rate. If you see a school with a grad rate in the A and B range, 8 to 9 out of 10 students are graduating on time. For us, it's more like 7 because we're averaging in the 70% range. So our last area that we wanted to talk about was subgroups. And in order to talk about subgroups, I felt like it was important to understand the demographics and who it is that they represent. So 79.6, nearly 80% of this district is classified as economically disadvantaged. It is our largest subgroup of students. If we move the system, we have to focus on that group of students. As they move, we move. The second largest subgroup of students is African American, representing 68.9, nearly 69%. Our fastest growing subgroup over the last couple of years has been Hispanic. It's almost at 15%. Students with disabilities typically ranges from year to year between 9.5 and 11.5. Right now, our last testing cycle, it sat at 11.4%. Our English language learners are also increasing. In the last testing cycle, they represented 9.7%. And then the Asian population is significant in our testing data, and it represents 3.7% of our student population. So what we've prepared for you is a report card, basically, for each subgroup. I know a lot of times you guys speak with people, and sometimes I'll get texts of, hey, what's our grad rate, or what's the grad rate for this subgroup, or what's the ACT composite? And so we wanted you to have, and this is probably a poor choice of words for the accountability person, but we wanted you to have a cheat sheet, so to speak, and so that you could have these facts at your fingertips. So if we look, and all of these slides are identical, it's just the subgroup changes, and you'll see some nuances. You want me to pause? Sure.
Sorry.
Sorry.
On the subgroup data, I'm assuming that some of these groups overlap each other.
Correct.
So how does that affect these numbers?
So if I have a flag for that subgroup, I get into that average. So I could be counted in more than one subgroup.
Okay.
I am counted in more than one subgroup. If I'm a student with disabilities, if I'm economically disadvantaged, and if I am African American, I am counted in each of those.
Okay.
For the sake of this data that we pulled.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so if we look at all of our students, and by the way, we can tease that out if any, we can, every student has what we call a flag in our information system. So we can pull data and filter it according to those flags, depending on the question that's asked or the request that comes in. So if we look at all students, if you look at the left column, it's the performance column. We have a 70.1 performance score for the district. Our progress grade was an 84.8, keeping in mind that 75 gets us to the B, the 90 gets us to an A. So what we want to see next year at this time is we want to see that 70 become a 75, and we want to see that progress. And we think that's realistic, go up to an A. But how do we get there? So look at the middle. It starts with K3. Miss Webb's back there looking at me in the back of my head, and it starts with early childhood, Miss Webb, it does. But if we look at our K3 and our literacy data, we pulled the end of the year third grade because we know that that's an important marker right now for promotion and retention. It also is going to suggest some readiness for the ELA LEAP test. At the end of last year, 53.6 of your third grade students met the benchmark, okay, or the standard on DIBELS. When we tested ELA, every student in this system who took an ELA LEAP test, 39% were at mastery or above. Remember, that's where we're getting those A points. And so we need to see that mastery number move to move us into the B or A range. In mathematics, there's a significant gap. Mathematics was at 26%. That all contributes to that assessment index. That assessment index at the elementary level is 70% of your score. So for these elementary schools that you see that are moving students, that's where the root of the work is happening. On the high school side, our district composite for ACT is 17.8. Remember, you need to hit that 18 or above to get substantial points. Your high school graduation rate is sitting right now at 72.9 for all students. That's about 7 out of 10. To get into that B range, you needed to be closer to 8 out of 10. To get an A, you need to be 9 out of 10. And ultimately, as a former high school teacher, we know I taught English 4 for years. Our goal is 100% to walk across the stage. And then the credentials. Again, you earn 100 points for a diploma, but those add-ons. And right now, our rate was at 30.7. Oops. All right, so I won't read each number to you here, but what I would invite and encourage you to do is watch the nuances as the data shifts, as we talk about the different groups of students. Up in the right-hand corner, I gave you the percentages earlier. This is the enrollment total for the students, and you can notice the progress remains a B for economically disadvantaged, but their performance score drops. You can see some slight gaps in the DIBELS and in the ELA and the Math LEAP. You notice that graduation rate drops. Over on the right, the ACT composite drops. We're going to switch to African American students now. Notice the progress stays a B, but you've dropped the overall performance from a 70.1 to 64.8. Your ELA and mastery is a close range, but your math is a significant gap. Over on the right-hand side, your ACT composite has dropped. Your graduation rate, though, for African American students is higher than the district as a whole. And then on the right corner, you see the percent earning those advanced credentials. Hispanics, over 5,800 Hispanic students in the last assessment cycle. Again, the overall performance was a C. Their progress was a B, so we were moving students there. You can see the gaps in that middle column on the assessments. They are lagging behind their peers. The ACT composite is about a point below the district. And look at your graduation rate. It is significantly below the district average. We're going to flip to students with disabilities. This is where your performance score shifts. So your performance score for students with disabilities was a D in the last cycle, but the progress was a B, so they kept up with their peers. The assessments, remember, some of these students do qualify for alternative assessments, and so that's factored in here. 13% mastered or above at ELA, 9% at math, so we see gaps there. The ACT composite is at a 14, but the graduation rate is near 70. Your English language learners represented last spring about 3,900 students. They too earned a D, in the overall performance score, but maintained a B in progress. You notice their DIBELS scores are below their peers, significantly below their peers, as is the ELA and the math mastery levels. That grad rate is one of our lowest for the subgroups. It's at a 31.9 for your English language learners, and it's a very significant gap of those English language learners who are earning those credentials on the Strength of Diploma Index. The last subgroup that we wanted to point out tonight that really demonstrates some gaps within our system In last spring, there were just shy of 1,500 Asian students enrolled across the system. Their performance score was a 111A. Their progress was higher than their performance score, meaning that they were outgaining their statewide peers at a rate of 115.5 points earned. The DIBELS rate was well above the district average at 71.3%. ELA mastery was at 75, math mastery was at 74. The ACT composite was above both the district and state average at 21.6. The graduation rate was 93.6. And then over 21% were earning those strength of diploma credentials. So what are the implications for our work? And when we get this data and we filter it and we sort it, what do we do with it? So I wanted to point out a couple of key pieces here for you. So each school receives what we call a roster report. It's individualized by students. So a principal can see not only their raw score and their achievement level, but exactly how many points they earned for their site. They see how they rank ordered and how they met that, if they met that progress target, if they didn't. It's a column, yes, no. And then you can get detailed information about the student. We then put that information into what we call an SPS calculator. The State Department of Education, and I have it hyperlinked in your packet, releases what's an Excel spreadsheet that's locked with programmed codes in it, where you can plug in a number of mastery, number of basic, number of advanced students, and I can project or I can simulate what my score might be. So every school in our district has a school performance score calculator that's simulated, that they work throughout the year. And periodically, our Director of Accountability brings them, gathers the groups into the accountability lab to review those calculators with them. The district's accountability team typically generates profile data reports at the request of the superintendent's office, the academics team, or any leader of like for special education or English learners. We've worked with them to generate specific data reports, data profile sheets, or what we call internal report cards. And so, as a matter of fact, we've been working since Mr. Cole's been here. I think we're on our third iteration. We did one the very first beginning of the year, targeting our diagnostic data and our LEAP data when it came in the summer. Then we did another round after the first 9 weeks. And then the most recent round we did after school performance scores, what the team did was the team looked at what was earned under the current formula and started to project as to where it would land in the new formula that comes out. And so I've got a snapshot there for you, and we've labeled those critical conversations. Mr. Cole, Miss Edwards, and members of the senior team and the high school team met with some high school principals last week to review individual data and to look at their individual report cards and where those opportunities for growth are, where those areas where we have room and what we need to do to hit that B mark in each of these indices. And then lastly, as we pivot and transition into the new accountability formula, we were lucky and blessed and very grateful that the Assistant Superintendent for Accountability from the Louisiana Department of Education and the Director of Accountability for the Department of Education spent a morning at our invitation and at our request, and we're very grateful they did with our principals at the Professional Development Center. Each principal left with a scorecard that would show their projection for the new formula, and they had gained a better understanding of how the new system will work. And so what we're pledging to do is, as we get trained deeper and deeper into this new system, we will not only as an accountability team continue that conversation with our schools and our district team, but we know that we have the support of our friends at the Department of Education who've been very gracious with their time and resources, because we are a large district and we appreciate the fact that we're their neighbors, and they're often willing to help and lend assistance. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions.
Okay, we do have quite a few. Thank you so much, Ms. Okonski. We do have quite a few board members in the queue. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm sorry, I stepped out. I had a question. Someone asked me a question outside. So I wasn't sure before I put my name in the queue whether or not this was the statewide overhaul on school expectations and accountability, but now that you said that, it makes sense. I was going to ask specifically with graduation appeals no longer available for the state of Louisiana, and with greater parameters around proficiency in math, English, social studies, and science, and special monitoring and growth for math and English for the lowest achieving students, how does all of this take effect for them?
So that's what we're doing, Mr. Landison. You're right, it hasn't taken effect yet. We're transitioning. So next school year will be the first year that we're measured. So one of the things that we're doing on these critical conversations is we're looking at, and I say there's a talented group that's behind me watching at home right now who crunch these numbers and pull and filter these reports and make these neat dashboards. But the same data goes into two different calculators. It goes into the current one, and then the state has released a new one. And so to your point, as someone who's worked in schools, when the rules change, the data shifts. And so what we're doing is those side-by-side comparisons to identify those gaps, to identify those opportunities for improvement, and then that's when those critical conversations come in. As we pivot to second semester, what do we need to start doing now to address the individual needs from students? What do we need as high-dose tutoring comes in, as after-school remediation, remediation for high school students who still haven't passed an EOC? How do we pair those students with the right adult, with the right teacher that's going to move the work?
And I also think it's extremely important to acknowledge the biggest thing we have to do is identify every single student in our school system and understand where he or she is academically relative to, first, their own growth and their potential. As you can see from the numbers, our students are growing. All right, they're definitely growing. That's the area where we are performing the best. I think what we are saying, the principals in those conversations, do you know your students? Do you know who your students are? Do you know where they're performing? Do you know what they need? And if you know those things, how are you developing a system within your school to meet the needs of every single student on campus, recognizing that every single student is going to fall into a subgroup of some sort? And once you address their academic needs, we can begin to look at similarities across the board in terms of what students need and develop a plan. The best opportunity we have is making sure our students are exposed to high quality curriculum during the actual school day. We can't control what happens after school or what happens when they're away from our school. So what we're trying to ensure is that every school we have systems in place and we're using the time wisely to meet the needs of our students. And then when we begin to think about after school support or think about in-school support, pushing in or pulling out, what do those systems look like to ensure we're maximizing the time students are spending with those educators? And then next to that is providing high-quality professional development for our teachers so they know exactly what they need to do in making sure students are mastering those standards. So it's about putting a system in place to meet the needs of all of our students, and then as we begin to drill down and see subgroups develop, how are we supporting those subgroups where we see those commonalities? So I just want to make mention of that.
So let me just say this. I love where this conversation is going, and that's essentially why I asked the question, because it leads to another question for me. One, a lot of educators, my hat goes off to all of you, because this is going to be a lot of grueling work, because you're rethinking, you're remastering everything that you had already known. And I don't disagree with the state's new overhaul, because a lot of the times when you look at data, if you know anything about data, it's easier to manipulate when you're not looking at the lowest subgroup of students that you're dealing with, because you only focus on who's in the middle. If you can just push this student 2 more points, 3 more points, but then you still had this group of students who are not moving at the same pace as other students. So I just want to say kudos to all of you. The only other thing I was saying, I think you kind of answered some of that, is how do you deal with burnout? And I'm not just talking about burnout for employees, but also burnout for students, because we're asking them to do a lot also. One, you have to get caught up to speed on what's happening inside of the classroom. Even with high dosage tutoring, that's the things that are taking place while school is going on. And then you have after school remediation. How do we ensure that we're not burning those students out and we just keeping them on track and they're pacing at the right speed and we're monitoring in the right way?
Well, I think making sure we know what works for every single student and not making one size fit all. Every student may not need to support after school. They may need it during school. Some students may need to support after school who are not necessarily receiving it in school because they need to focus on something else relative to their actual learning need. And so one of the ways we prevent burnout is creating individual plans for individual students and then tailoring what we do during the school day for those particular students. That's number one. Number two, incentivizing the work. not necessarily the performance, but the work. Oftentimes, we recognize when students put forth the effort, they're going to see the growth and the development. So rather than wait until they show us a performance, we need to incentivize the work. How are we celebrating students who are working extremely hard in the system that we create for them to be successful? How do we celebrate those students? And then last but certainly not least, consistent, constant communication with their families. Consistent, constant communication with their families. The greatest way we can help our students is by helping parents to understand where they are, how they're performing, and to ask them to celebrate and acknowledge their effort at home, shifting the mindset from the end game to growth. How do we develop a growth mindset for our families to support our students getting better? And I think that's how we address the burnout if we attack it from those three ways.
Absolutely. I just want to say I love the conversation. I love the way that everything is moving right now, and whatever I can do. I know, as you already know, we're helping with high dosage tutoring in the middle school space. So we're just, understanding how these pieces fit together. It just makes absolute sense. So I just want to thank you again, Ms. Okowski, and all of the educators out there doing great jobs. And thank you again, Ms. Superintendent, for the explanation.
Ms. Sule.
Yes, thank you. This answers a lot of the questions that I had, and I love the way that it's laid out, easy to read. I appreciate the cheat sheet. Thank you. And this question may be for you or maybe for Lamont, and a follow-up to one of the things that was just said. Well, one, I love to hear that you're connecting with the state, or that we're connecting with the state and bringing them in to like really learn and prepare, so we're not like trying to play catch up. But I asked last board meeting and didn't know if there had been an update on how many teachers have taken the science of reading training.
Ms. Edwards would respond to that. But keep talking.
If we don't have it, I know she can get it for you, because I know it's something that we track. For instance, when we do summer remediation for those students who haven't met the benchmark, we have to hire one of those teachers. So I know that we have on file a roster.
But my understanding is all the teachers are supposed to be trained in it. Is that correct?
Well, all of the K through 3 teachers are supposed to be trained in the science of reading.
Okay.
So that's for teachers and administrators. I have a little tracker in the back, so I'll get
Okay.
a number for you, and I'll talk to you before you leave
Okay,
tonight.
thank you. I'd
Yes.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have entered into the queue. First, as always, Ms. Okowski, thank you so much for sharing the details and giving it to us where we can understand it. In respect and honor of my absent colleague tonight, I know that Coach Lewis would ask the questions in regards to either ACT data or literacy data, and in respective subgroups as well. Taking a look at the information that you shared with us, my question is, I know we have committed to spending millions of dollars towards ACT prep. And so I guess my question is more rhetorical. I sure hope that the data looks different at the end of this school year.
So I'll answer it this way. Ms. Edwards, myself, and several members of the team has had an opportunity to dialogue with ACT over the last 30 to 45 days, where we're exploring a district-wide strategy that we will start small to see what we could do to pivot resources at midterm and early next spring. But then there'll be a larger team that involves the Division of Schools, the Division of Academics, accountability, some school leaders, our workforce development team, because that's critical with the work keys piece, and ACT with them as well. And so to answer your question, yes, ma'am. That is currently under review, and we'll have a plan for you in the next few months.
Because of course, I just thought about two different scenarios. One, just right across the Mississippi River in West Baton Rouge, they have implemented I want to say a lunch period model where there's dedicated ACT prep that students have to participate in, and they have begun to see the gains already. The other is, I know as a classroom teacher, remembering that we had to embed ACT prep within our classes. I taught social studies, which of course social studies is not on the ACT. There's science, reading, writing, grammar, and math. and we had to include reading and writing, and pretty much align ACT prep prompts to go along with our lessons. So my question, I guess, is, are we on track for that, so that way we can,
Part of the conversation was looking not just at the assessment side, because I think that when we're looking at students, certain subgroups who have historically been labeled at risk, putting a student in front of the ACT for the first time at 11th grade is a disservice because they haven't seen it.
Absolutely.
So part of the conversation is, how do we introduce this assessment and the different nuances of it to our students at an earlier year, number one. Number two, to your point, as we're both former high school teachers, is like, how do we give our teachers the tools that they need in the toolbox? So it's not just giving the students the access, but it's also giving the teachers the access. And to your point, there are some trainings out there that are available that we're looking into.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Russ.
Thank you, Ms. Okonski. I wanted to ask if you would, not tonight, but if you could provide, maybe in a similar format, how some of these subgroups overlap and what the data would look like, specifically how economically disadvantaged subgroups, as well as students with disabilities and English learners, overlap between, for instance, African American students, Hispanic students, some of those different, how they come together, because I really like to see, certainly we have students in those subgroups that aren't economically disadvantaged or that don't have disabilities. So I'd like to be able to kind of tease out what those look like and those common denominators, and that would be helpful.
We can get our data team on that. Tomorrow is last day for holiday break, but I promise you, Mr. Russ,
Yes.
we can get
It's
you
not
that.
something I need
we,
tomorrow.
We can get you that the first week that we're back. But they're probably watching, so that some of them will probably start
Okay.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then, I think it's great that that the data team is able to kind of provide some diagnostic or some simulated scores to the schools to see where they are on track, especially as the accountability model is changing. That really interests me as a board member, because a lot of the time we don't really get an understanding of what has happened in a school until, October of next year, right? And so I would, I think it would be interesting for the board to be presented with some of these simulated models on school scores, perhaps after every semester end, maybe in January and June or something like that, with the understanding that it's our best guess, right? It's not official, but it could tell us in a more real time or on time format how we're doing. And where the opportunities are, and are we on track with things that are going on and the resources that we've put out. So I would ask Superintendent Cole if that's possible. I think it would be helpful for the board.
Okay.
Thanks.
We can do that.
You got that?
I do.
Okay.
And I actually think, if you don't mind me saying, with the transition to the new formula, that's simple, straight proficiencies and not all these point values, that'll be something we can easily do. When we give you the LEAP data in the summer, we can steer the conversation that way.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I was going to ask the same question that Mr. Russ did, so I look forward to that. I also think this is a really helpful presentation tonight, one of the best I've seen on this very complicated topic of school assessments. But I do think I would like you to start working now to show how we, in the future, how we can, in a format similar to this, on these, I like how you pulled out those like 4, 5, 6, 9, 8, 7, 8 key measurements, for each subgroup and whatnot, and to track those over time. If we could do that. A couple of the questions. With the new scoring system that the state's putting in, will we be able to see whether we've made real progress compared to this past year under the old system? You talked about being achievable to make like a 5% growth in a particular performance target. Will we be able to see that, or will that get lost in the fact that now we look worse because the
Sure.
states raised the bar?
Great question. So in 2018, when they released what we call the new formula, that's 6 years old now, when we received the spreadsheets in November, we got a column or a section with old formula, section with new formula. And so we were able to track over time. We're being told that we will see that again. And what we also know is this current school year in play right now is operating what I'm gonna call under the old rules or the current rules. And so what we believe will happen is we will receive a projection for the new formula as well as the official old formula at the end of this school year. So I do believe for 2 consecutive years in a row, from what I'm hearing dialogue from the department, is that you'll get both.
Okay, thank you. And that dual reporting may continue for like a couple of years, do we think? Or
believe-
maybe just the one, or what?
I think what they did last time was just the one, but remember this year you're still operating officially off the old, and then they'll release the new. And then what I would expect them to probably do is in the first official year be able to provide both ways again.
Okay, thank you. How will the shift to the state accepting work keys, impact the ACT index score? And what really is the difference between what the ACT measures and what work keys measures?
So WorkKeys is supposed to be more career-based. Those of you who have taken the ACT, have kids at home who've taken the ACT, you know it's more academic-centered. It's on your core content standards. WorkKeys is supposed to be more of a career readiness tool and a career readiness predictor. What the department has done in previous years is they've done and I believe it's question 10 or 11 in your packet, where you can see the point values that you earn for both ACT scores and WorkKeys. To your point, what many high school, Mr. Lannis hinted to this earlier, what many high school principals have done is the policy right now is an 11th grader must sit for the ACT at least once. Once they see that score, they can decide, do I continue to administer the ACT assessment, or do I shift that student to WorkKeys? A lot of times that is dependent on their diploma track. If they're a university-bound student, you will see the school continue to offer the ACT. As a matter of fact, we pay as a district for the ACT retest for many of our seniors who choose to take that assessment. Other times, they'll continue to provide WorkKeys. And WorkKeys, the current policy is you can administer WorkKeys every 30 days. So there's a window, it's locked. If I took it this week, I have to wait 30 days before I can take it again. So we will see some shifts. We haven't seen all of the total. I have a friend who likes to say the devil's in the details. We've seen the first draft of some of that policy. We haven't seen all the fine details yet, or we're starting to see the fine details, but that is something that we will be working towards, to Ms. Power-Lewis's point, with our principals as we dig deeper into ACT. I will tell you this, right now ACT is weighted at 25%. It's being cut to less than 10% in the new formula. I believe it's 8.3. So that is a shift as we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources. While it's important for students, we will have to have that conversation of how do we realign our resources for that return on the investment.
Thank you. Last question. I know that Bessie and the LDOE are very focused on truancy rates and attendance rates right now. Does truancy or attendance factor into the school performance scores at all?
It is not a direct mode of the calculation.
I mean, obviously, if the kid's not in school, they're not learning very well, but the truancy rate itself is not a mathematical factor.
But to your point, the formula 2 iterations ago had an attendance rate in it. The attendance rate hasn't been in the formula in this most recent cycle.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Lannis,
I promise this is one question.
very short.
I've always wanted this, Ms. Wachowski, and maybe this is a question also for you, Mr. Superintendent. Why is it that we wait so late to get a student to take the ACT or at least prepare for it? What you find in the data and all the stats is that the students that perform astronomically well have prepped for that test, some of which as young as 7th grade, because they don't wait how many times you take it, they just take the highest score. So it's just an open question. I've always wanted that, like, why are we waiting so late? By the time you take it in 11th grade, you only have but a few months before you have to apply to go to college.
That is one of the pieces we're exploring right now,
Okay.
Mr. Lannis. That's a great question that we're asking right now as well.
You know what they say, you gotta always ask the questions that you already know the answer to. So I just need people in the audience to hear that. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Okonski. Sincerely appreciate you. And I think it's important that we continuously have these conversations around the data so we know where to set our priorities and deploy our resources. I'm going to defer the last part of my presentation to the end of the meeting, that we have a number of people who are here to speak on particular items, so I don't want to belabor the point, Madam President. If it pleases the board, I want to show that video at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. So generally, my reports are longer than the superintendent's, but it's going to be substantially shorter this time. I am actually next as far as D2 is concerned, receive as information update from the board president. And with this being December, the last meeting of 2024, I do have a surprise visitor for you all and just some things that I would like to share. But like I said, I promise that my report will not even be half as long as Superintendent Cole's was. All right, so I'll start here. All the places you will go in 2024 is my reflection of this dear year of true and vulnerable growth. I would like to personally thank you, to say thank you to all who have worked extremely hard to carry our district throughout our very interesting year. Thank you, fellow board colleagues, for making the heavy lifts, being mentally and physically present while leading various initiatives, conversations in and throughout our community on behalf of and in support of students and families. Thank you. Thank you to our interim district leadership team who carried and supported our system from January to July, bringing successes such as increased community engagement around board priorities, the budget, and the superintendent selection process, and landing our educational staff a permanent pay raise, of which we had not seen in several years. Thank you to this individual who is absent tonight, former interim and current deputy superintendent, Mr. Smith, for your humility in recommending a phenomenal leader in the form of Mr. Lamont Cole to serve as our permanent superintendent, who is homegrown and has not only continued the work we've started, but has ignited a true revival spirit for our educational stakeholders, students, and families. Thank you, Mr. Cole. For every phone call, for every text message, every meeting, every site visit, every speaking engagement, every email, and every data analysis that you've engaged in less than 6 months on the job. But the work is not complete yet. Tonight, we will close out our board's book study of the insightful read entitled Great on Their Behalf: Why School Boards Fail and How Yours Can Become Effective by Eric Journey Crable, of which we look forward to meeting him virtually in January. We are thankful that we are already beginning to reap the benefits of our read through our revisions of our strategic plan that is reflective of all roads leading to student outcomes as we collectively work to move our district forward. Considering all, there were initiatives and projects that my colleagues and I either started and have not completed, or simply did not get to, that are still on the slate for next year. One would be the launching of strategic and intentional conversations and recommendations via Community Task Force. An RFQ is in formation for a consultant who will moderate and/or lead this work in the areas of transportation, truancy, employee working conditions and culture, and then also reapportionment and redistricting. We are excited and thankful for a revived, moving, shaking, and soon to be circulating EBR Schools Foundation under the leadership of Ms. Lightfoot, who allows many of our community partners to give to the worthy causes supporting our educators, students, and families. Lastly, but certainly not least, we are currently experiencing our first major facilities realignment occurrence in the move of the J.K. Haynes Elementary family and merging Majority with Ryan, Brownsfield, and Progress Elementary families. Although we know these moves and realignments are emotionally difficult, we understand that they are necessary and that there are no doubt more facility realignments to come. I feel very confident, though, that through our upcoming facility survey process, led by the company Leanfrog that we've heard from earlier, the recommendations of our facilities ad hoc committee, which was also referenced earlier as board liaisons, made up of yours truly and board members Gode, Lanas, and Russ, and the broader conversations with other board colleagues, district leaders, and our community as a whole, we will continue to make decisions that reflect the best interests of students and families regarding this. As we know, board leadership, consisting of president and vice president, will be up for a vote in January. My prayer is that this process will not be nearly as contentious as it has been in the past. Whether it be me or anyone else sitting in this seat or the seat to my right, we will continue the initiatives that have already begun with the inclusion of new or renewed amazing projects that lead to positive student outcomes. Again, to my colleagues and to the public, I say thank you for the opportunity to serve as your 2024 East Baton Rouge Parish School Board President. This has definitely been the highlight of my educational career as a homegrown product of EBR schools and a former teacher in EBR schools. Without further ado, we will now receive 2 book reports, one from Mr. Russ and one from Superintendent Cole, as Board Member Lewis and Deputy Superintendent Smith are absent tonight. And immediately following those 2 book reports, I would like to invite our very own legendary Dr. Press Robinson to share a brief 2 minutes, since Superintendent Cole took all my time, brief 2 minutes intro about a new book that he has written, Pressing Forward. So first we will hear from Mr. Russ, then Superintendent Cole, and then Dr. Robinson.
Sure, and thank you. So because Mr. Lewis couldn't be here today, I agreed to cover all 4 chapters that we were assigned. So I'm gonna do.
Bless your heart. Be brief, please.
I'm gonna be brief. I made notes, and I'm gonna do this in a way and really just talk about my takeaways from those chapters, not trying to summarize them. So I'll start with chapter 3, which is evaluating superintendent performance. My takeaways from this chapter was that as a board, we should evaluate based on our set goals and guardrails, not how board members feel about things. And that the superintendent's performance should be indistinguishable from the school system's performance. So those were 2 very key things that we should be considering as we move forward in the work. Chapter 14 was the most valuable resource, which if you can't get the subtext there, it's time. Whatever school boards are focused on, they are incentivizing everyone else to focus on as well. I found that interesting, and I've found that true in my experience on the board so far. Whatever we ask questions about, whatever we put on the agenda, whatever we seem to care about, those are the things that will manifest for better or for worse. A stat that was given in the book is that most school boards spend between 0 and 5%, the majority less than 1% of their time, monitoring progress relative to the goals they have set for student outcomes. The author recommends spending at least half of your allotted time each month towards goal monitoring as a board. So if we spend 500 minutes in meetings as a board, as a whole board, we should at least spend 250 of those minutes talking about monitoring the goals that we have set. And then when in doubt, always opt for taking action based upon data about student outcomes, not on adult inputs. Chapter 5 is aligned decision making. Now this chapter The author will.
Is that 15?
Oh, excuse me, 15. Not chapter 5. I'm not going backwards. Chapter 15, aligned decision making. This chapter, the author will tell you, is more geared towards the superintendent, but is important for board members to know. Goals should be the first priority for resource allocation. You should combine those with guardrails to become the superintendent's focus when crafting a budget. These are things that we've been talking about as a board recently. When it comes to staff allocation, student outcome approaches to staff allocation should match students with the greatest needs relative to the goals and should consistently match up teachers who can deliver the highest quality of instruction with those greatest needed students. Systems should create conditions that inspire the most effective teachers to serve in places where student needs are the greatest. And the author admits that oftentimes you can't force teachers to work in a workplace where they don't want to be or where is far from them or is least convenient. So it is the responsibility of the system and the board to make sure that they create conditions that inspire those teachers to want to work where the needs are the greatest. Last, they recommend putting your system, your agenda, your policies, and your committees on a diet that focuses your time and resources on student outcomes. Some examples of this are: committees should never serve the self-interests of the board. Don't form committees for doing superintendent work. If senior staff has to be present for a committee to be effective, it is probably doing superintendent work. Every committee, task force, however you want to word it, should have a due date and a deliverable. It should end when its goal is achieved. And then last, delegate operational policy to the superintendent. And then we'll finish with chapter 16, which again is a little bit into the nitty-gritty with how the work gets done or how the sausage gets made in the school system. It's entitled Cascading Priorities Throughout the Organization. It focuses primarily on the superintendent's role in relationship with the board's set goals and guardrails. They talk about developing lead and lag measures to monitor and influence set goals, how to develop initiatives for the leadership to accomplish that, and then how to implement and hold accountable through performance meetings and use performance tools and frameworks to collaborate. In a nutshell, it's about organizational structure and how superintendents can accomplish what boards set for them to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe you all, he has earned his A for both himself and Coach Lewis. So thank you so much. Sue?
Madam President, I didn't know I was supposed to go tonight, so I'm going to ask, like the students in class, for an extension on my home. No, I'm
minus 5 points.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Adam and I, Deputy Superintendent Smith and I had chapter 17, which is responsibility to the community. And in summation, it talks about school board leaders, communities, and stakeholders. We need to empower them with the tools and strategies and the mindset they need to prioritize student outcomes effectively. And the one thing we have to make sure we do is communicate early and communicate often. And a lot of times what school boards do is communicate information after it's been gathered. What the book suggests we do is communicate what needs to be discussed and then set timelines to have those conversations with community before the actual board meeting so that community members can have a conversation with school boards, and then at the board meetings the business can be taken care of. So the conversation has already been had, and you have to establish trust that way so that the community knows before the meeting the direction the board is going in, and has had an opportunity to converse with the board about their concerns. And then it talks about providing a roadmap for transforming governance to drive measurable improvements in student success. It underscores the real change begins with shifting adult behaviors, fostering continuous improvement, and creating a culture of accountability and collaboration. ultimately ensuring that every decision made by the school board is on the great behalf of the students they serve. So the wonderful thing about this book is every single chapter talked about keeping student outcomes first and then making sure to adhere everything or to prioritize everything you do towards those student outcomes. So aligning the resources and priorities based on the goals set, and then building community trust, talking about those goals and making sure the community knows what the goals are, monitoring those goals, making sure you communicate that, and then effective communication. Don't wait until you have the results. Talk about with the community what it is you're trying to accomplish and connect everything that is going on to student outcomes and not adult concerns, more about student outcomes, and then try to shift the adults to start talking about their concerns relative to student outcomes. So I think the book does a great job of talking about practical next steps in terms of evaluating the meeting minutes. What have you discussed during your meetings? Has it been more about adult issues, or did you spend more time talking about student outcomes? Then looking at data analysis on student outcomes, something we've done in the last few meetings, look at the data to determine where we need to go and where we are, and then promote reading in the discussion, right? Are we taking out the time to read about where what we're trying to accomplish, and then implement coaching and training? It really talks about board members need coaches to help guide them through the structures. Sometimes those coaches need to come from other industry to help guide some of the thinking and frame some of the work, because in the other industries, it's focused on product production and an outcome, and our product production or outcome should be based on what our students are able to do when they leave the K-12 experience. I'm sorry, Miss Webb, the pre-K-12 experience. So find student outcomes focused on the coach to work with. So that is chapter 17 in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So you all, thank you so much for obliging me during this book study for the last few months. I hope that this has been helpful. Of course, you know, as we talk about abbreviating our time, it was important that we go through this process to be able to be more transparent, and then also to make sure that moving forward, we continue to keep student outcomes at the forefront of all of our business. We will now ask Dr. Press Robinson to come forward. As he comes forward, I would like to share this with my board members, my fellow colleagues. I want to say Merry Christmas to all of you. These are to my colleagues. In the gift bag that you received from me at your seat, you will find a signed copy of Dr. Robinson's book with a special message written by me, along with another great read to enjoy over the break. No more book reports for the time being, at least that's for now. Let's continue to lead by example in remembering that reading is truly one of the most fundamental skills that we should embrace as people, and continue to set the example for those whom we lead. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, board members. I really appreciate the opportunity to stand before you and the public and say a few words about a project that I never thought would get started. It's my memoir. It covers the time from when I was about 6 years old to the present day. And it talks about my involvement in the community of Baton Rouge. I'm a South Carolina transplant to Louisiana, but I've been in Louisiana so long now until I don't know anything else. So I'm a Louisianian by now. And my book talks about a lot of the things that make Baton Rouge what it is today. It's part historical, it's part civil rights, it's part voting rights, and hopefully it's part sage advice that one might take with a few grains of salt. It is called Pressing Forward, My Life as a Baton Rouge Community Pioneer. Those are not my words, by the way. Those are words of others who see what I have done in that manner. I see it as just a community person doing what he thinks was right to do at the time that it was done. And so I urge you to get a copy and read the book. The feedback that I get is a pretty good read. But that's the word too of others. Of course, I think it's a pretty good read. But you know, it's something that I got started with during the pandemic. And it took me 2 years to write, 2 years to get it published. And it's published by the LSU Press. I have been spending time going all over Baton Rouge and soon over the state of Louisiana, telling people that Press Robinson wrote a book, and it's called Pressing Forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You all, I felt like that was the perfect gift for my colleagues, as Dr. Press Robinson was our first African American school board member in East Baton Rouge Parish and our first African American school board president. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Robinson, for sharing your words with us and for sharing this wonderful read with us as well. Again, thanks again, and Merry Christmas to my colleagues. This does conclude my report, but I believe that there are some comments in the queue right now. Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the gift, Madam President. I do want to note that I already own a signed copy of Pressing Forward. I'm very happy to have two. It's a very good book. Dr. Robinson has been meaningful to me since I first contemplated running for the school board. Dr. Robinson was speaking at the public library right around the time that I was just making that decision, and I went to hear what he had to say. He hadn't published the book yet at that time, but I learned a lot more listening to him about the history of our schools, particularly the chaos that we went through 50 years ago, and the struggles our community as a whole faced back then. And I appreciated the education that he provided me. So every time he speaks at the library, which is right near my house, I always go hear him and encourage everybody else to. I also, Dr. Robinson, I'm very grateful to you as a member of the Baton Rouge community for your leadership, and frankly, this community and our educational system would be in a much better place today had people listened to what you were telling them 50 years ago. And so thank you for everything that you've done for our students. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Robertson, I don't know if you know, and I think I try to tell you as much as possible, there is no Darius Lannis sitting on this dais if it was not for the things that you had been able to do and accomplish throughout your career. When you say others gave you that title, I'm others. I consider you an educational pioneer, a community pioneer across Baton Rouge. You know, there's this old saying that says, you know, oftentimes people have to try to aspire to be something high, like a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan. That's what you were to me. I wrote 2 theses. My master's thesis was literally about the work that you accomplished while serving on this board, and I don't even have the words to say really from the bottom of my heart how much I truly do appreciate all the work that you've done. And I thank you. I ask you to continue to do so. And Madam President, I really do. I'm getting a little tired, I'm sorry. I appreciate you giving me this book. You give me some reading material to look forward to over the Christmas break. Man, you are a hero. And I want you to know that you live in my heart, you live in my mind. Everything that you've done for this community is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now continue. We are to Alphabet D3, 2324 audit results. The audit results report for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System for the school year ending June 30th, 2024. Ms. Lopez.
Hi, good evening, board members and superintendent. I'm here to introduce Eisen Amper, Amanda Strybeck, and Freddie Smith will give you the results of the audit.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Strebeck. I am the audit partner for the engagement. I'm with Eisner Amper here in Baton Rouge, and I'm joined tonight by Freddie Smith, who is also one of my colleagues who assists with the school board audit each year. So we're going to kind of go over some of the high-level results with you tonight. We want to kind of start with our required communications. We're going to go over some of the 2024 highlights and also some of the summary audit results. Our audit is substantially complete. We are in the process of finalizing the reports, and we'll have those filed by the 12/31 deadline with the legislative auditor. We have spent the last probably 2 months working on the audit. It's a significant amount of time and effort that goes in to completing the audit, both with your team and my team, and making sure that we get to the presentation here tonight. So we are, let's see. On the wrong slide. Okay, here we go. We are prepared to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance you can receive. Our responsibility is to give reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And basically what that means is that we aren't able to test 100% of transactions. We do sample, and there is auditor judgment and materiality involved. But again, it's a clean audit opinion for the fiscal year 2024. We also are required to look at the major federal programs each year. This year we chose to review the child nutrition cluster as well as Title IV. Those programs were up for rotation based on that assessment, and those also will have an unmodified opinion as well. So then as we move into what reports are issued, as I mentioned, we are auditing the financial statements. We also look at the federal grants and your state compliance with what we call Yellow Book. And then we are also engaged to do a statewide agreed upon procedures, and those are procedures that are required by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor. And then there's also agreed upon procedures that is required by Bessie. I do want to point out the difference between agreed upon procedures and the financial statement results, or is that agreed upon procedures, we do not give an opinion. So that's a yes or no, matter of fact, what the results are. So moving back up to the financial statement findings. We did have one financial statement finding that was noted as a significant deficiency that we are required to report, and it was related to noncompliance with budget law. And I do want to point out that this was related to, let me back up. So the budget law requires that you amend your budget if your revenues are going to be 5% less than the amended budget, original budget, and then if your expenditures are going to be greater than 5%, your actual expenditures are greater than your amended budget by 5%, you need to amend your budget again. So y'all do have a process in place where y'all are amending the budgets, you're adopting them, amending them. But it was noted for one of the funds during the year that the expenditures did exceed the amended budget amounts by the 5%. But what I want to point out is that there was adequate revenue in that fund to cover those expenditures. Those expenditures were allowed to be spent out of that fund. It is more of it's related just strictly to noncompliance. So the money was there, the money was allowed to be spent out of that fund. It's just this is where it landed, where it was at greater than 5%. So we are required to report that under Yellow Book. We have talked to management about that, and they have a process in place already to continue to monitor the budget to actual results, to look at that right at fiscal year end again as well, just to ensure this doesn't occur again. So this is something that we do have to report, as I mentioned, but it's not a matter of expenses not being allowed. There were no findings related to the federal grants, so we do look at internal control and we look at compliance for your federal programs. We don't give an opinion on internal controls, but we do look to make sure that things are in process. So who's responsible for reviewing and approving those expenditures, who's responsible for monitoring compliance with those expenditures. And so I'm pleased to report on the two programs that I mentioned earlier related to child nutrition and Title IV. There were no findings. And so that was approximately $38 million of your $165 million that were federal expenditures for the year. Moving into the statewide AUP, again, these are required by the legislative auditor and the different criteria. The goal is to take a deeper dive into the records and the policies and procedures of the school board, looking for best practices as well as just good policies and procedures, and having us test transactions that maybe would not have come up in the financial statement audit, just a deeper dive. And so there were just a few comments that were noted through the statewide agreed upon procedures. Nothing significant, nothing that we felt like would need to be reported as a significant deficiency, and nothing that we felt like needed to be reported as a recommendation to the board. Now to cover some of the financial highlights. So this is just strictly the general fund. So when we were looking at the financial statements, we're looking at the general fund, we're looking at the prop funds, we're looking at all the federal funds, everything. But this is just kind of a highlight of the results for 2024. So your total revenues for 2024 were approximately $558 million. Your total expenditures were approximately $575 million. So you had an excess of expenditures over revenues of approximately $17.8 million. Then there were transfers that come in, and these are transfers that are coming in from some of the other federal programs like the indirect costs and things like that. So that is approximately $17.2 million. So your net deficit, or in the for-profit world, your net loss would be approximately $662,000. So basically almost break even for the year. And I do want to point out that the loss that y'all experienced in 2024 is more favorable than what y'all originally budgeted. So when y'all had your budget and your amended budget, you were looking at potentially $4 million of unfavorable. But due to some of the shifts in some of the revenue and monitoring your expenses, y'all were able to bring that into almost a break-even position. You saw a big increase in revenues year over year, mainly related to taxes that were collected, and then the expenditures, the increase is really related to salaries and additional costs there and the raises that occurred during the year. One area that we like to look at is what your operating reserves are. It's just making sure that, each year that there's a certain amount of money that's being kept set aside for future operations, and looking at some of the long-term stability of the school district itself. So you ended 2024 at approximately 25% of expenditures to the operating reserves compared to 27% in the prior year. But if you go back and look, you could see there's been steady growth and focus on this area since 2020. This year was just down a little bit. Y'all do have an internal policy of approximately 15% of revenues, which y'all have continued to meet, and that again is about 25%. So those are just some parameters that have been set up at the board level to make sure that there's good fiscal responsibility each year, and so we're continuing to see that. The next slide moves into fund balance of revenues and I keep going the wrong way, I'm sorry. Fund balances. So this includes all of the financial activity of the school board. So as I mentioned earlier, you have the general fund, you have all the federal programs. This also includes the purple, the internal service funds, as y'all are self-insured, and so that's related to risk management, workers' comp, health insurance. So you ended the year for 2024 of approximately $390 million. What I want to point out, approximately $205 million of that is restricted related to grants that have come in that have very specific donor restrictions related to that. You have approximately $38 million of assigned, and that is assigned at the school board level related to facilities, transportation, things like that, specific projects that y'all know are coming up. Your overall unassigned, which is for general purposes, there's no restrictions there, either at the board level or by the donor, is approximately $101 million. And then you have approximately $41.5 million related to internal service funds to fund those programs for health insurance, as I mentioned, workers' comp and things like that. So again, steady growth there, steady, the allocations are pretty consistent as far as year over year. So your primary focus on a month-to-month basis is the revenue and expenditures that are coming in. That's what y'all are monitoring. How much is coming in? How much is going out? Where are we going to be? For the financial statement audit, we also have to include some of your long-term assets, such as your all the buildings and equipment, and then we have to include your long-term liabilities, which is related to your health insurance and your your retirement benefits. Those are significant costs to the school board for your employees going forward, and those liability numbers they're a large part of the overall operations and commitments of the school board going forward. So we point out this slide to say that you have approximately $465 million invested in capital assets. That's all the buildings and equipment across the school district. And y'all continue to improve schools, add schools, make adjustments as needed, trying to keep those facilities as current as possible. Then you also have what's called the restricted amount, and so that is limited again for some of that grant activity. And then the unrestricted amount is showing up as a negative of approximately $533 million. And the majority of that again is related to those long-term benefits for retirees and teachers and healthcare and things like that. I want to point out that this graph stands out because it is such a large negative number, but that is consistent across all governments unless you're able to fund those with assets. And that's really just not the case. There's not additional cash available to fully fund those. But what we are seeing and trending is an improvement in this number because those liabilities are going down as y'all are continuing to make contributions in, and you look at those actuarial assessments, the overall liability number year over year is going down. But what I do want to point out is that your overall net position at that government-wide level, which includes all your assets and all your long-term liabilities, is a positive $137 million. And so just several years ago, that was also at a deficit. So there has been improvement. There has been effort on budgeting and activities and things like that. So things are moving in that direction as we continue, from 2024 into 2025. Okay, just to kind of recap again what our responsibilities are is to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance when we're giving our opinion. There are numerous significant estimates in the financial statements that particularly the pension liability and the post-employment benefits, those require that y'all hire an actuary to come in and calculate those liabilities, and there's certain assumptions that go into that are made each year, and that we look at those to make sure that they're reasonable and comparable from year over year into other school districts, and there were no major exceptions there that we would need to report. You also have your insurance claims payable, and that's just trying to look at what the estimate for those costs are going to be going forward and how much will have to be paid out. And then also related to your depreciation expense, and that's looking at the useful lives of how long buildings are going to last and things like that. And so we just want to point out that there were no disagreements with management or disagreements in any of the accounting. We have requested representation from management that they have provided us with all of the necessary information. There's a lot of information that maybe doesn't always go through finance. There's agreements, contracts, things like that, subsequent events that we would need to be aware of to make sure that those are properly reported in your financial statements. And so we expect to obtain those tomorrow from management. We do also want to point out that as part of our non-audit services that we assist with, is assisting with preparing the actual financial statements and like assembling it. Those financial statements, the numbers and the footnotes and all of that are the responsibility of management. They provide us with that. We just kind of assist with some of the assembly of it. And then we also assist with the data collection form to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. And then one other area that I wanted to point out is that we're required to be independent of the board and management, and we each year we look at that internally and represent that we are independent. So I do want to thank everybody for all of their assistance with the audit. This is a very large lift out of all the different departments. We deal with finance, IT, HR. Everybody, I think, has to spend a few minutes with us as we complete the audit. But the audit went very smoothly. We are, like I said, substantially complete, and we will get this finalized and submitted to the legislative auditor.
Thank you so much. There are a few questions or comments from my colleagues. I want to just share as well. Thank you so much for the detailed presentation. As I mentioned to Ms. Lopez before, and any other who will listen, I appreciate you sharing this, and I sure hope that whenever we have a new slate of board members, when we have that initial introduction or retreat or what have you, that we hear a similar report, because I think that that would have really helped our understanding coming in as a fairly new board about a year ago. But still, thank you so much. And we do have questions and/or comments. Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the audit and the work that goes into that audit. I wanted to take a couple minutes to just say, when we voted on the budget for FY 23-24, which this is the audit of, there was some expression of concern by a number of folks that we were spending too much money, that we were being fiscally risky with the stipends and other compensation provisions that we had to assist our teachers and support staff to deal with the transportation crisis at that time. And I think that these numbers bear out that that was the right thing to do. That otherwise, had we not done that, we would have been leaving money on the table that was desperately needed at that time to help our students and our teachers and our very hardworking support staff. And I also want to commend our staff. Deputy Superintendent Smith presided over the last 6 months or so of this fiscal year as interim superintendent. Ms. Lopez for their continued very prudent fiscal management, because you're quite correct, as you noted, we budgeted that we were going to be about $4 million in the hole, and we were only $600,000 in the hole, and that's because of both because we've always been cautious at estimating revenues and at the sound and prudent fiscal management that our staff has provided. So I just want to commend Deputy Superintendent Smith and Ms. Lopez and the entire team for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Laneth.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me just say these presentations just keep getting better and better. The way that they are laid out. First question, I guess this may be for you, Ms. Lopez. Is this now the highest our fund balance has ever been? With $140 million? Okay. So if it's not the highest it's ever been, it's been close. And this is after all payroll deductions, payroll changes in terms of employee raises, things like that. All right. Okay. So that's not okay. That's one of the main questions I wanted to ask. Thank you for letting me know that. I guess my last question would be in terms of the budget law inquiry. How does that affect the district? Because I know you said you had to report it. So just curious.
It will be included in the financial reporting package. That is a public document on the Legislative Auditor's website. There is an opportunity to and for management to provide their response as far as why it occurred and what the process will be to ensure that it doesn't occur again going forward. And that's also in that same document. And that gets reported to the Legislative Auditor. At this point, I don't think it's going to create, they may have a question or two, but it's not a matter of question cost. So it's strictly non-compliance with the budget law. So it will be tracked. I don't think it will have a financial impact.
So is it simple as a notation?
It is a notation. It's something to be aware of. It's something that they look for. If there are findings, it has to be addressed, but I don't see that it's going to create any long-term impacts.
Okay. And I'll just take a piggyback, and I'll end here, Madam President. Something that Vice President Martin just said. 2 years ago, there was a lot of projections around how the budget was going to have some significant shortfalls, and it affects the ability to make decisions around employee pay and things in terms of our operations. Having this type of detail in front of us ahead of time, especially as you said before with new members, is tremendously helpful for us to have an understanding of how financially healthy our district actually is, so we make more concerted efforts whenever we are making decisions about budgetary things, expenditures, and revenue. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I piggyback off that comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now moving to Alphabet D4, announcement of public meeting. Notice is hereby given that at its meeting to be held on Thursday, January 16, 2025 at 5:00 p.m. at its regular meeting place, the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board Office, 1050 South Foster Drive, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The Parish School Board of the Parish of East Baton Rouge, State of Louisiana, plans to consider adopting a resolution ordering and calling an election to be held in Consolidated School District Number 1 of the Parish of East Baton Rouge, State of Louisiana, to authorize the renewal of ad valorem taxes therein. Okay, we will now move to alphabet E, reports from board appointees to committees and agencies. Are there any reports at this time? Okay, all right, seeing none, we are now moving to alphabet F, unfinished business. F1, contract amendment. HES or HES, discussion, consideration of the approval of a request from HES Facilities Management of a contractual increase of $960,000 based on the cost of living adjustment, COLA, of 4% to begin in the school year 2024-2025. Are there any public comments?
Madam, point of information before. When we changed the comment policy, a number of people expressed an interest in knowing what the motion was going to be. I'm not making a motion, it's not time, but I did want to signal to everybody that I intend to move to defer this item until February.
Okay.
Before we have the public comment. I'll make a motion once the public comment's done.
Okay. So, Mr. Blunt, we will continue with public comment at this time. Okay. All right, so public comment. Thank you so much, Mr. Martin. Ms. Matthews. Okay, maybe not. All right, they're in the wrong order. I do apologize. Okay, seeing no public comment at this time. Anything online, Mr. Martin? And that's for F1.
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Seeing no public comment, we will now entertain a motion, and then we will entertain board comments.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to move to defer this item until the February Committee of the Whole, and I'd like to request that staff provide us kind of a comprehensive report on this contract and a recommendation for any changes that are necessary in order to get us to the end of this contract term without having to come back again.
Okay, so it has been moved by Mr. Martin that this item F1, contract amendment, has be deferred until February. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Russ. Comments from the board at this time. Mr. Martin.
No, I just think that this is an important contract. We've talked about it a lot. I think we still don't have all the information we really need to evaluate this, and I'm concerned that with just this one particular increase, that may not be the end of things, and we may have to keep dealing with this. So I'd really like for us to direct staff to have a comprehensive review and come up with a comprehensive recommendation to us about what we should do to get us through the end of this contract term on this item.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stewart.
So, Mr. Martin, are the vendors or any representatives here from HIS?
I do not know if they came tonight.
Okay, and the reason why I've asked it because
I believe there are some that might be outside.
Okay, no, I was asking because I know that there was a presentation that was supposed to be held, and I do understand how important it is, and so I wanted to know whether or not, I'm assuming that they weren't prepared to do the presentation, and that's the reason why we're.
Yeah, I think they anticipated that we would likely not consider this item tonight, and so, but I don't know, they may be here and prepared.
Okay.
No, he says they're not here.
Okay.
Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam President. In lieu of the item that we have up right now, Can anyone answer how many years are left on the contract?
If I'm not mistaken, there are 2 years left on the contract.
Yeah, okay, all right. And I'm asking that because, again, in lieu of the item, this is the reason why we're deferring to make sure that we don't have to do this year by year by year like we've
Yes,
done the
sir.
last 2 years, correct?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
that's the plan, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to talk about this contract one more time before it goes out to RFP and be done with it.
Okay. Mr. Baloo?
Thank you. The motion mentions a comprehensive report. I think it would be useful to include, management's view of the performance on the deliverables in that contract. So that's my only comment.
I'll get that, Board Member Baloo, I'll get that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no further board comment, we will now entertain a vote, and this is to defer this item until February.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to Alphabet G, consent agenda, Mr. Gode.
Thank you. Consent agenda. The following items will be approved as part of the consent agenda, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as an item on the regular agenda for a separate vote preceding the last item on the regular agenda. 2. Grants. Consideration of a request for the acceptance of the following grants. A. Marketing, Education, Retail Alliance in the amount of $25,990 to provide for 9 high schools to run a school-based enterprise and related matters. B. Marketing, Education, Retail Alliance in the amount of $5,885 to provide training for Glen Oaks High to earn a basic industry-based credential in Certified Logistics Associates and related matters. C. Marketing, Educational, Retail Alliance in the amount of $21,875 to provide professional development workshops that will increase student internship competencies in the areas of leadership, communication, workplace conflict resolution, work ethic, corporate etiquette, self-efficacy, and related matters. D. Grow Your Trade Grant sponsored by DeWalt to provide $10,000 worth of DeWalt tools for CTEC programs and related matters. E. New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation in the amount of $4,000 to Scotlandville Magnet High for additional band equipment and related matters. F. Neighbors Federal Credit Union in the amount of $10,777 for school site projects at LaSalle Elementary, Belfair Montessori Middle Magnet, and Glen Oaks Middle and related matters. G. Entergy grant in the amount of $1,000 to Belfair Montessori Magnet for the school garden and related matters. 3. Professional service contract, District Management Group. Consideration of request for the approval of a professional services contract in the amount of $62,000 to provide a breakthrough results program for 5 early childhood school-based teams to focus on improving proficiency in literacy, strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source LA4. 4. Contract, First Students Incorporated. Consideration of request for the approval of a contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and First Student Incorporated not to exceed $470,000 to provide for vacant school bus routes. 5. Litigation. Consideration of the request for the approval of the recommendation from Gwen Shamlin, General Counsel, East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, in the matter of Tressa Jones and Lakeith Carr versus Violet Gibson, East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, and certain underwriters at Lloyd's of London. SIT number C-723442, Section 23, 19 Judicial District Court, Parish of East Baton Rouge, and to provide for related matters. That is the end of the consent agenda.
Thank you. As we proceed into comments from the public, are there any items that we desire to pull? Mr. Lannis.
Item 4, contract First Student Incorporated.
Okay, all right, so pulling item 4 from the consent agenda. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, then we will go on with public comments for the consent agenda, excluding item G4. So any public comments for any items on the consent agenda that are not for G4? Do you see any, Mr. Martin? Okay, seeing none, then we will entertain a motion.
I so move the consent agenda be adopted as read, X item number 4.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gode, and it has been seconded by Ms. Stewart. And comments from the board at this time on the consent agenda excluding item G4. Okay, seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Returning to item G4, contract First Student Incorporated, consideration of a request for the approval of a contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and First Student Incorporated not to exceed $470,000 to provide for vacant school bus routes. Okay, comments from the public. I have 3 comment cards here, one from Ms. Harrison, Ms. Antoine, and Ms., I think this is Woolfork. Okay, you don't have, would you like to, are you planning to speak or, okay, all right. Not yet. Okay, all right, now we can go. So Ms. Harrison, you're up first. Okay, did Ms. Tammy Harrison left? Okay, all right, next would be Ms. Carla Antoine. Okay, all right. The next would be Ms. Catherine Woolford.
Good evening to all the board members and to the president. I'm a bus driver for EBR. I have been with EBR for 13 years. And for you all to take in consideration of paying First Student more money than we make. We haven't had a raise, and I don't know when. We get 10 or 15 cents per year. Then y'all, last year before last, Narcisse was here. He promised us on the news that we would get the 12.5 the first year. We got it. This year we got nothing. And next year, we were supposed to get our set the raise in the 25, 26. We got nothing. How do you all think that'll make us feel? I'm not the only one. You have a lot of bus drivers here that we're not happy with the way you all are doing these things. I understand, but if you pay your employees up the salary, then maybe they'll pick up these routes. I do 3 routes. And most of us who here do a lot of other routes. But if you don't pay us, how y'all expect for us to work? Would you like to work and don't get paid? Would you come? Would you come, Mr. Cole? If they didn't give you a check to come sit behind there, would you come? I drive 3 routes and then work a job in the middle to try to make ends meet. And that's not fair to us. All we asking if y'all give us our money, what we were told we're gonna get. Our 12.5 for this year, and consider our raises by the years we've been here since we agreed on that when Narcisse was here. Now, we can't do nothing else. I mean, something else gonna have to give. You go think you getting first student for the drive for those routes. You better look at the routes you gonna have if you don't do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolford. Ms. Matthews.
I'm hoping that some of the bus drivers that we're sharing some of the things that they see on a day-to-day basis and that they know are happening and what they know can be done to fix it will come up here and share with you, since they see it every day. I'm in a classroom, but they see it every day. They know what can be done to be fixed without spending the $480,000, and then that can be used to give to them. So hopefully they'll come up here and tell you that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Matthews. Ms. Applewhite says that she does not wish to speak, but she has submitted a comment card in opposition of the recommendation. She says instead of giving first student the money, give the drivers a raise, which will be $1,300. Sure.
Hello. I just wanted to play something.
President Dandrius Lannis explains the plan moving forward.
Just keep in mind, even though this is a stipend, it is going to feel like it is a salary increase for the next 2 years if we go through with those stipends, as we just said. And then by year 3, you can try to lock you all in at that cost.
Okay, that was just something that we thought was really, you know, something that was stood out. I don't know how to, I'm not good with this. Yeah, that was promised. This is my first time talking up in y'all. I'm not used to this. But I've been a driver here for going on 11 years. I have 5 kids. All my kids are pretty much good girls. And to just be bringing home right at 20-some thousand a year, I have a mortgage, you know. My children, they trying to go to college, you know. So we trying to get things together because I got 2 that's left that's in EBR schools that's about to graduate in May. I mean, it's hard on us. I'm a trail driver. I just went back because of the extra money, to be real. I treat my kids like they're my kids. First of all, like, I understand y'all saying about the routes. Those routes can be handled between these 350 bus drivers. Real talk. If the supervisors will just revamp things and stop letting other drivers only have 1 route and still get paid their whole salary, and stop worrying so much about these field trips, which I know the field trips are good, but still, if they do a field trip in the middle of the day, they need to come to work at the evening shift. Don't put that off. They still have a job to do, just like all of us. You know, we shouldn't be sitting here working on 3 and 2 jobs trying to make ends meet. You know, I mean, be real. I'm tired. And I'm quite sure all those drivers out there are as well. That's why we're here. And I just want everybody to come back to the table, everybody in transportation, to look back at these routes and do what's right. You know, don't give a driver 1 route. No, we're supposed to have 2. Trails, sometimes we run 3. You know, we can do it. Give us that $470,000, because we can use it. We definitely can. It would not go we need it. And transportation, y'all need to go through there and revamp it again. Y'all revamp everything else. Revamp that transportation office. And I promise you, you'll get some sources. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further public comment at this time, we will now entertain a motion on item G4. Okay. All right, it has been moved. Right, you can. Okay, so it has been moved by Mr. Lannis and seconded by Mr. Martin. Comments from the board at this time, Mr. Lannis.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. And one, I want to say thank you to the bus drivers for speaking up, letting a lot be said. So one, let me start with what we just heard. One of the statements that was made is if the board goes through with the item that we had at the time, which would have been 1 year stipend, 2nd year stipend, and the 3rd year was supposed to be a lock-in on 4% pay raise across the board. However, I want to go back and I just want to track back because a lot of this stuff should have been explained much better. Because after we had our conversation outside, I want you all to know that I did some research, made some communication, and I also pulled up the item that was approved by the board. In the summer of 2024, it was proposed by then or former superintendent, Dr. Cito Narcisse, that he wanted to put up an 8% across the board pay raise. Because of what we were.
Lannis, I do apologize. Do you mean the summer of 2023?
I'm sorry, yes, 2023,
Okay.
I apologize, I'm so sorry. The summer of 2023, it was proposed that he wanted to put up an 8% pay raise. At the time, as we just talked about our budget with our fiscal managers, one of the things that the concerns of the board was at the time that we had a huge shortfall. And because of that shortfall, we didn't want to lock anyone in at 8% across the board pay raises for everyone, not understanding how it was going to affect our budget going into the next fiscal year. When we came back, one of the things we said was what you just stated, which was the next proposal was in year 1 was supposed to be a $5,000 stipend, much like it was in the one that we ended up voting on. Year 2 is supposed to be a stipend, and again, year 3 was supposed to be a lock-in. However, we found ourselves in a similar situation where our board felt uncomfortable moving forward with locking in pay salaries or pay raises across the board when we didn't know where we were going to be fiscally. What we did, however, vote on was, and this took place on August 15th, 2023, was a $5,000 stipend, a $2,500 retention incentive, and $3,000 for paraprofessionals that they also received. And this was coded as a one-time stipend at a total cost of $8.3 million. So I just want to read this into the record so there's no confusion. This memorandum is for consideration of approval of a stipend for all bus operators, transportation aides, mechanics, subject to additional conditions as outlined below for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. This proposed stipend amount for $5,000 is intended to be disseminated in 2 payments that will be rendered on November 14, 2023, one of which, when we talked to Ms. Kelly Lopez, it was received, and May 16, 2024, which was received, and also the $2,500 stipend, which is proposed as a retention incentive that is intended to be disseminated May 16, 2024. Moreover, the board is asked to consider the approval of a stipend for school-based paraprofessionals for the 2023-2024 in the amount of $3,000, which will be disseminated in payments that are rendered on November 14, 2023, which is $1,500, and May 16, 2023. I'm sorry, it should have been May 16, 2024 for $1,500, which upon asking Ms. Kelly Lopez, those have been received, which at a total cost of proposed expenditure of $8.3 million. So I say all that to say that while the conversation it started with us thinking that we could get to a permanent pay raise, that was changed in lieu of our fiscal shortfall, making sure that we were good agents of where we were in terms of our budget, and we landed on a $5,000 raise with a retention incentive of $2,500, which came out to be $7,500, if that's correct. Yes, and that it was coded again as a one-time stipend and not a permanent pay raise.
Thank you. I've entered into the queue. Ms. Lopez, if you will come forward, please.
Good evening.
Hi,
ma'am.
Ms. Lopez.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. I know that Mr. Lannis has pretty much given us the data that supports the decisions that our bus drivers have mentioned tonight. But I just wanted to ask you if you could just give it to us completely clean and straight of, have our bus drivers received all that they were supposed to receive? Okay.
Yes,
And
they
then
received everything in 23, 24.
Hold on. Look, I'm going to go on and give you both questions at
sure.
once. The other is, are you aware of what may be the difference in the compensation of a first student bus driver versus an EBR bus driver at this time?
I have no idea how much a first student bus driver makes.
Okay.
But they did receive the stipends last year. They have received the $1,000 LDOE stipend this year. They received it on 11/27. As did all staff. They received the stipend on 11/27, and they received the $1,300 raise in the budget this year, as everyone did. All the support staff did. But there were no additional stipends set aside for this year for the bus drivers. No.
So there was a stipend last year.
Yes, ma'am. There were several.
Okay. There was a raise this year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then there was the LDOE stipend, the state stipend as well.
Yes, ma'am. They received on the 27th of November.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Cole, do you possibly know what might be the difference in the parameters of a first student bus driver versus an EBR bus driver?
No, not at all. And I've instructed Mr. Howell and Mr. McCann to go back and reevaluate based on what some of the bus drivers have shared with me over the past few days, a way that our bus drivers can cover those routes before paying first student to do so. I recognize the contract with first student is an effort to cover those vacant routes, but after having conversation with bus drivers this week, and they have assured me that if we go back and reevaluate some of our systems, that they can cover those routes. And so if in fact we can do that, I've asked them not to pay first student until we are certain that our bus drivers are not able to cover those vacant routes. One of the things we have received this year, and first, kudos to our bus operators who've done a phenomenal job this year. Our transportation service is much better. We still have some parents who call consistently around late routes. And students not being able to get to school on time, and that's our concern. How do we better provide the service? But again, after having numerous conversations, I've been on the phone with a number of bus drivers, met with a small group very privately, and they have assured me that if our supervisors in the transportation department go back, reevaluate, look, and assess how to distribute the work fairly, bus drivers will have an opportunity who work for EBR to cover those routes, and we won't have to spend the money. Better to have and not need than to need and not have, however. But Mr. McCann has assured me, and he's sitting right there, that they're going to do that, and he and I and Mr. Howell are going to have some conversation during the break to determine whether or not and what that looks like. And so, Mr. McCann, you coming to speak, or are you just passing by?
Yes, please, and thank you.
Okay.
Skedaddle.
I like where you got it.
Probably be better if I didn't comment, but I want to support what your sentiments are about our bus operators. And I wanted to say that the large number, the big ticket number over 400,000 has been mentioned quite a bit, but that's only on as needed basis. And we have daily dialogues with our bus operators about who's covering what routes. But we will continue to have that dialogue. And this first day we get back, second semester, January 3rd, we'll be listening to our bus operators. If they can provide us those solutions, we'd be more than happy to use them, as you said.
Yes, sir.
Can I use a point of personal privilege? And I'm only doing this because I'm the maker of the item. With that being understood, I'd like to actually change the item. That we move this item what I recommend. Well, let me ask you this before I do that. How much time is it going to take for you all to assess whether or not those routes, whether or not our current bus drivers can do the routes? And I ask that question because we have $470,000 on the table.
Well, I want to say this: we no longer have that amount of money on the table.
Okay.
I want to be clear. The amount of money that was on the table was left over from having vacancies in the transportation department.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Since that time, we've had a recruitment fair. We've hired 4 additional bus operators using those funds that were available to pay first student. We've hired additional bus operators.
Okay.
And so therefore, and I'm hoping during the holiday break, miraculously, 7 more bus operators will show up and say, we want to drive for the greatest school system in the world, which is EBR, and we want to be bus operators. At that time, we won't have any funds to spend with first student if we hire the additional bus operators for the vacancy. We won't have that. We currently don't have $400,000 to spend with first student to fill those vacancies. We just don't, because we filled the positions with bus operators last weekend. So we've hired about 4 bus operators since we initially had this conversation.
Well, I'm glad I pulled this item. Understanding we don't have the money to do so, I'm going to turn to council. Council. How do we, because we don't have the funds in order to cover it anyway.
No. Keep in mind,
Okay.
I want to be clear. There was never one check for $400,000. It was up to that amount
Okay.
if needed.
Gotcha.
You follow what I'm saying?
Okay.
If we don't need it, we won't spend it.
Okay.
All right. We hadn't needed it just yet because, again, our bus operators have been supportive and working and providing the coverage for those routes. So we hadn't needed it.
Okay.
So
that makes
since
sense.
Mr. Lannis has hijacked my time.
I'm sorry. That was a point of personal privilege.
That's
now.
all right. That's all right.
But I want to be clear about something, Mr. Lannis, and this is the tough part about the work that you've charged me with doing. When we talk about student outcomes, we have a responsibility to our families to ensure we're providing a high quality of service. And we don't want to put ourselves in a position to not be able to provide that high quality of service. And so I'm asking now if there's anyone with a CDL who is certified to be a bus operator in our school system to join our team.
Okay.
To join our team. I'm also asking the leadership in the transportation department to work with our bus operators to cover those routes.
Gotcha.
But I want to be sure that we speak to our families and say that we're going to do everything we can to make sure we are providing that service at a high level, because the number of concerns we've had, the greatest number of concerns we had around our transportation department has been late routes or has been missed routes. And so we have to make sure as a board and as a superintendent, we're doing everything we can to cover those routes. So while I'd rather not pay first student to cover the routes, I'd rather pay bus operators who work for our system. I think we have to be very careful to not have what we need in the event we need it.
Yes, sir. So let me take a back seat. Let me first apologize. I didn't mean to hijack your time. I only did this because I was a maker, and this is just my understanding of the issue at hand. I'm going back to something that Mr. Nathan Russ said. It is not for the board to decide what happens as superintendent. So if it's your recommendation that we keep this on, we can keep it going as needed. And if you don't have to use the money, as you just said, we will not use the money. So I take a back seat in that.
We
All
will
right.
not.
My apologies.
My commitment is we will not. We're going to work with our bus operators to cover those routes and spend the money with our bus operators.
So yes, so for our public who's listening as well, and thank you for the dialogue, for our public who's listening as well, this is just like putting or making sure you have money, some money put aside for in the case that we don't have either enough bus drivers or buses to be able to pick up our kids at any given time. Am
Bus
I understanding
operators,
you
correct. Yep. Mhm.
Correct. Okay. So then that also means that bus drivers got to come to work every day.
Well,
Not everybody. You're not every bus driver.
Well, let me say this. Let's be careful with our word choice. Our bus operators work hard every single day.
Yes.
And they come every day.
Sure, the ones
But
that are in this room do, yes.
But there are some, for reasons and unfortunate circumstances, who have to miss.
Yes.
That's just the reality of the world.
Yes.
And in those situations, we want to make sure we're still able to provide a service.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so those were my comments. I sure hope that you all did not misunderstand. I'm appreciative of your work. Okay, I absolutely am. I do know, though, that there are people who miss work on a regular basis. And so this is to be like a final resort for those who are missing in action if we don't have enough bus drivers to operate their routes. And I say the same thing, Mr. Cole. I try my best to tell everybody that we're offering opportunities to get on-the-job training at the same time. Are we still offering that, Mr. McCann, where you can
Yes, ma'am.
you can get the training and
Yes,
get the
ma'am.
CDL, as well as if you have a CDL and you would like to drive the most precious parts of our community, which are our children, please apply. We need you. We need you. So thank you so much. Ms. Stewart.
Actually, Mr. Cole explained I wanted information to be conveyed. I actually spoke with some bus drivers and they wanted an explanation about the monies for first student. And as he indicated, it's an up to as if needed, and it's not like that. And of course, the confirmation on utilizing those drivers who would like to gain more routes. And so for those bus drivers that I spoke with, operators that I spoke with that are willing to do more routes, those routes will be offered to you as Mr. Kent just mentioned, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Support the superintendent and a continuous dialogue. We have dialogue with our bus operators every day about covering. The process, they want us to look at that process and interaction to make sure that the routes are assigned to bus operators we already have.
All right.
And we will facilitate that dialogue.
And thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Russ. All right, he waves. Okay, seeing no further comments from the board at this time, we will now entertain a vote on item G4.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Now on to H, alphabet H, new business, H1. Before we go to H1, we are deciding on whether to hear the following expulsion matters. Again, we are deciding on whether to hear the following expulsion matters fully at a future meeting of the board. In order to hear a matter, we will need a motion and a second. No vote of the board will occur, and there will be no public comment as designated in policy. Okay? Item H1, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay, we will continue. H2, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay, moving on. H3, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay. H4, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay. H5, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay. H6, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay. All right. H7, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear the expulsion? Okay. Item H8, student expulsion. Discussion, consideration of a request to appeal a student expulsion. Board members, have you had an opportunity to review the record for this expulsion matter? Do I have a motion to hear this expulsion? Okay. All right. We are now moving to alphabet I. Superintendent Cole, was there a second part of the presentation?
Well, it's just a video for the end to end the board meeting, if it pleases the president and the board.
Okay, so if that is the case, may we, if there is no opposition, may we go ahead and read the organizational items and then see the video? Okay, Ms. Sule. I'm sorry. That's okay.
Madam Sule, we're going to need you to pay attention.
Sorry. Announcements of meetings. Yeah. Special meeting to be held on January 9th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Committee of the Whole to be held on January 9th, 2025, immediately following the special meeting in the Central Office Boardroom. Regular meeting to be held on January 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom.
Thank you. One additional announcement, Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, it is a season of giving. It's the holiday spirit, and it is around Christmas. This Saturday at Glen Oaks High School, starting at 9 a.m. until all gifts are given, we're having our second annual Christmas in Glen Oaks toy giveaway for all families across East Baton Rouge Parish. Any board member who wants to come out is free to come out and help support or volunteer. We will have gumbo. It's being served by Coach Duncan, who is the track and field coach for Glen Oaks High School, but it's just a way of giving back to our community and saying thank you for all the great things that you do. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Cole.
Madam President and board members, we had an opportunity to visit a number of our schools this week to try and spread some Christmas cheer, and we've also seen some outstanding programs, and so we just wanted to share a message from the school system to our families in East Baton Rouge Parish for the holiday season. So if we can, roll that video. Greetings, everyone. I'm Lamont Cole, Superintendent of the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. As we approach this magical time of year, we at EBR want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible school year we've had so far.
Hang all the mistletoe, I'm gonna get to know you better. This Christmas.
And we couldn't have done it without the dedication of our amazing students, teachers, staff, families, and partners.
This Christmas.
We are grateful for the trust our families put into us, because without your support, we cannot complete our mission. And that's to provide a world-class education to our children and build a better Baton Rouge.
Merry Christmas.
So from all of us here at the East Baton Rouge Parish School System, we wish you a very happy holiday season and a happy new year. Happy holidays, everyone. Happy holidays.
On that note, Mr. Gode, I'm going to steal your thunder today. It has been a pleasure serving all of you throughout this 2024 year. Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year to you, and safety. I pray for all of you. Have a good night. And we are adjourned. I'm sorry, Mr. Gode, you could have adjourned us.
I just want to acknowledge Mr. Blunt, that we had him over here, and we took it easy on him and didn't even ask him a single question. And I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Have a good night.
God is good.